Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 541st Board Meeting of the California Regional Water Quality Control Board, Central Valley Region. I would like to introduce the board members and staff at this time. On my far left is Carmen Ramirez of Atwater. On my immediate left is John Constantino of Grass Valley. And to my right is Denise Cadera of Allensworth. My name is Carl Longley of Fresno. Shortly, we're expecting that Tam Dudek, state board member, will be in the audience.
Dr. Longley?
Yes.
Ms. Dodek will not be here today.
She will not be here today. Okay, thank you. I will now introduce the executive officer, Pamela Creedon, who will introduce her staff.
Good morning, Dr. Longley, members of the board. Across the room from me to my left is Brett Braidman, Staff Services Manager in our Sacramento office. Next to Brett is Andrew Altavo, Assistant Executive Officer in the Sacramento office. And next to Andrew is Nathan Jacobson, for a short time now, Senior Staff Counsel for the board. To my far left is, and up at the podium, are the dais is Karen Lanfranchi Rizzardi, Executive Assistant for the board. And next to Karen is Adam Lapitz, Assistant Executive Officer in the Sacramento office. And to my immediate left is Patrick Palupa, Senior Staff Counsel for the board. And to my immediate right is Andrew Derringer, Staff Counsel for the board. In the audience, we have Clay Rogers, Assistant Executive Officer in the Fresno office, Clint Snyder, Assistant Executive Officer in the Redding office, and Linda Bracamani, Assistant Executive Officer over Administration in the Sacramento office. And there are a number of staff in the audience, so thank you.
Thank you very much. John, could you lead us in the pledge, please?
Please stand. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes. I have my copy here someplace, if I can find it. Yeah, thank you. I was looking at it earlier. I don't know what I did with it. This is the minutes for the meeting on September 30th. That was a tour that took place in the Battle Creek watershed. Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll motion, but I'll say that that was a very nice tour. I enjoyed it in that we got to see lots of interesting and impactful issues that are facing us. So, but I motion for the minutes.
Second?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Well, we need a roll call, don't we? Everything's roll call these days.
Mr. Ramirez,
I'll abstain.
Mr. Costantino,
Aye.
Ms. Cadara,
Yes.
Dr. Longley.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. And you abstained. You were not on the tour, is that right?
That's correct.
And then we'll be talking about it tomorrow when we do the board members' reports. But last month, Denise and I were on a great tour of mines. I think we were going to put the Clint Snyder Tour Agency. We're going to start advertising them. The board can find a revenue stream, I think, as we look at environmental issues. Anyway, that's a joke, of course. Moving on to item 2, the meeting procedures. In order to conduct our regional board meetings in a fair and efficient manner, we'll be proceeding in accordance with the meeting procedures that have been provided with the summary agenda and are available here at the staff table. And they're available upon request, and they're also posted on the board's website and are summarized on the computer screens during the breaks here. Any questions or comments regarding these procedures may be directed to Karen Lanfranchi Rizzardi, our administrative assistant. That takes us to board member communications, and we will, everybody's going to be here tomorrow? Good. We'll do that tomorrow when Bob is back. I have one card, moving on to item 4, the public forum. I have one card, Jeff Sharp.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Jeff Scharf. I'm here today on behalf of Marilyn Wardlow, who is present in the audience. Marilyn, would you please identify yourself for the board? We're here to say thank you. I don't get to do that very often. Ms. Wardlow is a co-owner of a property here in Sacramento located at 4301 Marconi Avenue. It was a Shell station. It has a long history, but that's a story for another day. This isn't the time or the place for it. You may recall I was here in July, and at that time, your staff was awaiting receipt of a remedial action plan. That plan came in. It was in response to a request by your staff to further investigate PC impacts with the property in both soil and groundwater. The concentrations are hundreds of times above the MCL. That plan has now been reviewed and approved and is in the process of being implemented by Shell's consultants at the directions and approval of your staff. The investigation began last week. It's continuing next week with an active soil vapor pilot study to see what we can learn about what's going on the site. These actions that are now occurring in the field after really a decade of time are the direct result of the assistance, the involvement of your staff. And that request was made on Ms. Wardlow's behalf as one of the property owners. And as the property owners, we have worked and will continue to work cooperatively with the staff, with the responsible parties, and as this investigation goes forward, in fact, as noted in the executive officer's report for the property, I think it's on page 17 of the executive officer's report, there's likely to be investigations that will include the neighboring property owners, and we're fully prepared to work cooperatively with staff and with these neighboring owners on the investigation. The most important thing for us today is to be here to tell you that we appreciate the work and efforts of your staff, and you don't often get a chance to hear that from folks in the field. You hear a lot of other things a lot of different times, and this is an opportunity to acknowledge a collaborative effort, a thoughtful effort, and a site that clearly needs some work and for evaluation, and we want to say thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Jeff. You're right. It's not often that folks show up to thank our staff but they do a good job. You're going to hear me making some comments later during the executive officer's report to that effect. And we certainly thank your client for the support that they have given towards reaching the point where we are now on the cleanup. And your comments that you're going to work with us as this progresses to other properties is certainly also good news. And I'd like to personally extend my thanks for the comments today to the Wardleys themselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Longley. Thank you, members of the board.
Any further comments? Good. We will move on then to the next agenda item, which is the executive officer's report. Are there any comments? The annual report is going to take a lot of time, so I won't take a lot of time with my comments, but there are a few things. And in particular, where was it? Made a lot of notes on them. One of the things I found out about these, and as they've gotten larger, is that there's a wealth of information in these. On page 26, I'm having, and we don't need an answer today, but it talks about participating growers and associated acreage. And this is a summary for the Tulare Lake and Western Tulare Lake basins. I have some confusion there when I look at those numbers and add up the numbers across and the change number. I come up with a discrepancy of 1,024 growers. So, and the same thing for the next one down. I come up with a very large discrepancy in acreage. So, I'd like to. Doesn't have to be at this meeting, but if I could get some clarification on that. On the next page, page 27, what I found very interesting was the California Rice Commission. is taking the next step, and they are putting their proposed nitrogen management template onto a web-based system. I'd like to extend my thanks to California Rice Commission for being not only proactive, but being very innovative in their approach, and I think that will set the standard, quite frankly, for how we can better get to growers. We're looking at all kinds of mechanisms to better inform growers of what's going on and how they can be more responsive in the whole issue of nitrogen management. I had some comments other. Oh, yes, on page 37 of the report, when we talk about Delta Regional Monitoring Program, that's a very important program for what we're doing. There was some issues when we first kicked this program off, and I really want to commend staff here for their work in bringing the progress we see now to where it is. That's been a long and hard job, and I think they've done extremely well. So with that said, I'll finish my comments. And are there any further comments on the executive officer's report?
Without any additional, and we'll get back to you before the end of the day on the addition of those acreage, Dr. Longley. So that's a note to Sue McConnell and her staff. But I do have 3 staff awards to give before I give my presentation on the board activities. So
Very good, which means
all right, so the first Superior Accomplishment Award is awarded to Jeannie Chilcott, our supervising engineer of our basin planning and the program manager for basin planning. So Jeannie has been with the board for for over 30 years and has been a key staff member in a number of basin planning initiatives to preserve and enhance water quality in the Central Valley. Most recently, she has taken on the lead role in CV Salts, the board's highest priority planning project to manage salts and nitrates. She has successfully managed staff and communicated with stakeholders to keep the CV Salts process moving forward through difficult technical and policy challenges. Jeannie also manages a number of other high priority projects as the Basin Planning and TMDL program manager. These projects include high priority basin plan amendments for agriculturally dominated water bodies, methylmercury TMDL, salt and boron TMDL, and newly proposed objectives for pyrethroids. Jeannie has a calm and confident manner and can always be counted on to listen intently and work collaboratively on a solution to any problem. She is an asset to this board, dedicated to water quality, and just simply a pleasure to work with on just about any project with this board. Jeannie is well deserving of this award, and I look forward to seeing her continue to accomplish such great projects that will benefit the Central Valley. And I should say she was also the key staff on our Selenium and the Grasslands Bypass project as well in the past. So she is very deserving of this award, and I'm very grateful she's our program manager for CV Salts.
Pamela, 30 years. How old was she when she started? Like 12? I mean, what?
At least, maybe 5.
I'd like to make a comment. Board members typically don't have the opportunity to work closely and watch what staff are doing, with the exception, of course, the executive officer and the AEOs. But Jeannie's one person being involved in CV Salts myself that I've had the opportunity to observe and, quite frankly, benefit from her inputs and her, as you said, very calm and cool approach to problems. And she is a problem solver. and I found to be a very bright person that has an encyclopedic memory of what's happened, everything on this board dealing with salt over the past 50 years. I don't know. the, well, you kind of tapped into Dennis along the way somewhere or another. So anyway, Jeannie, really happy to see you getting this, and I think it couldn't happen to a better person. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Longley. The next Superior Accomplishment Award goes to Ryan West, an engineering geologist in our Fresno office. And Jeannie, you will be asked for a picture, so you can't get it. So Ryan's normal duties as a member, I have eyes in the back of my head.
She does. She's a mother.
Ryan's normal duties as a member of the Irrigated Lands Unit involve implementation of the Irrigated Lands Program through work with the Cahuilla Basin Water Quality Association Coalition and other coalitions within the Tulare Lake Basin. During the month of July, Ryan performed an outstanding number of tasks associated with this. He conducted inspections of over 100 parcels. He reviewed and drafted the Cahuilla Basins Association Water Quality Monitoring, Surface Water Monitoring Plan. He reviewed and drafted a response to the Cahuilla, I can't say it now that I want to, Cahuilla, thank you, Association's annual monitoring report. He assisted the program manager with multiple maps and slides for the board presentation. In July, he prepared some engineering maps and diagrams with well locations and water quality data for the enforcement unit staff. And he's also provided information for the AAO for the July board meeting regarding oil fields and prepared for cross-examination. During July, Ryan also worked for the Irrigated Lands Unit, the Enforcement Unit, and the Oils Field Unit. So he was wearing multiple hats. He assisted the program manager. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm repeating a lot of this stuff. Let me just go on. Ryan exhibits a positive can-do attitude toward his work, cheerfully taking on each task as assigned and delivering excellent and timely work products. He is resourceful and hardworking. He's resourceful, hardworking, courteous to all, and a great asset to the Irrigated Lands Unit, as well as, I would believe, the Enforcement and Oils Unit. So, and to the Fresno office and to the Water Board as a whole. So for that, Ryan is receiving this award.
Thank you.
So don't go too far. Okay. This next award goes to Gerald Juth. Gerald Juth. I'm sorry, Gerald. I apologize. It has a D in the beginning, and so I wanted to make sure I didn't destroy his name. So Gerald has worked for the Water Board for a total of over 15 years. He's worked in the site cleanup program as a senior engineering geologist for over 3 years. In that role, he manages cost recovery sites, ensuring that soils and water are being remediated and that cost recovery funds are being appropriately managed amongst his staff. Gerald has always approached his work with diligence and good humor. In addition to his normal workload, Gerald has previously stepped in to manage the site cleanup program for the Central Valley once Duncan Austin retired in July. He was the interim supervisor and program manager. He wrote the work plan for the site cleanup program and was instrumental in planning for the transition of 3.5 PYs from cost recovery work to the new work funded through SB 445, which I'll discuss in a minute. Gerald has worked closely with the Assistant Executive Officer on this planning and has coordinated with the UST Program Manager and other site cleanup seniors throughout the region. He has also been very diligent and very effective in keeping the AEOs informed of activities in the program and has coordinated submissions requiring executive signatures for the Rancho office. Gerald has handled all this work with extremely good humor and his normal steady personality. He is a true asset to the region, and he did a superior job, a great job, while he was acting as the interim program manager. So I am very grateful for Gerald and all that he's done. So for this, he deserves this.
So we're now ready for the State of the Region report.
We didn't write the number. I just wanted to leave it here. If you can clarify.
Just while you're getting ready, I have a question. I believe there is a Cedric Twite in the audience. We have a card from you, and I thank you for filling the card out. But did you want to speak in the public forum? Was that your intent? Okay, before you get started, why don't you come up and we'll give you the opportunity, and we'll give you the opportunity to present. Turn the mic on.
Very good. Took surface streets over here and got here a little tardy. Sorry about that. I just wanted to introduce myself this morning, really. My name is Cedric Twite. I'm a registered professional forester. I work for Sierra Pacific Industries as their manager of California Regulatory Affairs. And so I'll be attending regional board meetings, state water quality board meetings to better understand the projects that you're working on, some of the challenges you're facing, and also be available to answer questions relative to timber issues. So I just want to have an opportunity to say hello, and you can recognize my face now. And if I'm in the audience and you have a question related to timber, feel free to call on me.
Thank you very much. And do you know Clint Snyder by chance?
Yes, I do.
He's an individual that you have to know very well if you're working on timber with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are then ready for the annual state of the board report.
Can't remember why I coined it that way, but anyway, so thank you. So this is a long presentation, and I hope you will bear with me while we go through this. There's a lot of things to go over with you, and most importantly, that this is really about my time to share with the board the things that staff has accomplished. Since you're always hearing so much about what they don't do, usually when people speak, I just want to take the next 60 to 90 minutes of your time to emphasize what staff has done over the last year. And since we have so many programs, this does take a little bit of time for us to accomplish. So today I'm just going to go a little bit about the background. There are some people in the audience who may not be aware of our regional board. I kind of use this as an opportunity for education of the public as well. And then I'll go into the status of our programs. We have 18 of them total, so you'll be hearing about 18 programs. I'll discuss a little bit about my priorities, and then I'll summarize. Not my priorities, our priorities as a board. Sorry. We understand. I know. It's all the same. I keep wanting to press my speaker button instead of the down button, so here we go. So just a little bit about the Central Valley Regional Board. It's the largest of the 9 regional boards in the state of California. It encompasses over about 60,000 square miles of land area, which it means about 40% of the total land area of the state of California. There's about 20% of the state's population within the Central Valley, but our water within the Central Valley is what's most important. I mean, the people are important too, but our water supplies a significant amount of drinking water for the state out of the various rivers and reservoirs and the delta. And we also, and because we're so large, we have nearly 36 of the 58 counties within our region, 20 of them entirely within our region, and 9 of them, the majority of the region, the county is within our region, and another 7 where we have a part of the region. We share with other regional boards. We have the largest West Coast estuary in the Delta in our region. We have the 2nd largest contiguous groundwater basin in the U.S. in our region. So, and also along with that, we also have a high amount of ag and other activities. So you'll hear through the presentation where we're doing activities in our board, the majority of them, or a large percentage of them that are done throughout the state, are done here within the Central Valley. So that means while we have a lot of beautiful resources available for the public, we have a lot of water, but we also have a big charge because we're the source waters for many and our job is to protect those source waters so they're available for beneficial use and also for drinking water, which was one of them. And with so many activities going on, we have a big charge to try and protect those source waters. So staffing, and budgeting, we have just about $36 million in personal services that pays for staff. We have about $350,000 a year operating expense. We do share some expenses with the state board, but that at least affords us money for office supplies and things like that. We currently have 240, just about 244 authorized positions. 55 of those are in the management staff. About 176 for technical and 13 support. Along with that support staff, we now have temp hires or seasonal hires that we hire about 45 of them. Some of them are on administrative function and some are in our technical area. Since 2010, our resources, I wish we could go all the way to 2006 because there was a steady decline in the number of staff over the years as a result of the impacts with the crash, we could say that, the recession. And so at 13-14 was our lowest point, and over the last 2 years we've been gaining in resources. Those have predominantly been in the oil field, cannabis cultivation, and timber, and some dairy work. This is a distribution between the regional boards. The lower bar is the Sacramento, between our offices within the Central Valley Board. The lower bar, the yellow, is the Sacramento office, the orange is Fresno, and the white is Redding. And as you can see, the numbers have declined over the years, but as we've increased, those increases have really gone into the Fresno and Redding office more than the Sacramento. And that's primarily because the dairies and ag and dairy and ag work out of our Fresno office, and now the oil fields and the cannabis and timber work is done primarily out of our Redding office. We like to have an idea of what kind of potential retirements we may be seeing in the next couple of years through the 3 offices. It's a total of about 18. There's no, because we ask staff if they're planning to retire. That doesn't mean they have to, but we like to plan for it. We have about 18 over the next 2 years. 6 of those are in the management staff, and 10 of those in our technical staff, and then in support for 2. So you'll hear about the need for succession planning here at the end of this presentation. We have our distribution in major program areas. Today I'm going to talk to you a little about groundwater, surface water, and planning, and some of our operations or administrative support. There is enforcement. Enforcement goes between surface and groundwater. We didn't split it out for that. You'll be hearing a complete enforcement annual update at the February board meeting from our prosecution staff, and so I won't be touching much on that today. So our groundwater protection program encompasses, well, when you take into account the number of people that are in the enforcement for groundwater, nearly almost 50% of all of our resources are dedicated to a groundwater program. And that's made up of these programs here in the pie chart: dairies, irrigated lands, oil and gas, site cleanup, underground storage tanks, waste discharge requirements, mining, and Title 27. I'll be touching on each of these. In the irrigated lands program, I have just put all my discussion on that under the surface water, but I'll be touching groundwater when I do. I should also point out that over time, our underground storage tank program will be winding down as the fund runs out. And that means we would expect, I don't know if it'll still be called underground storage tank or move into site cleanup, but some of those cases will continue on and how we proceed that. So as that winds down, we'll see site cleanup probably increase. We also expect some increases in the oil area and dairies and ag area. We have an overarching umbrella strategy that was put together and approved by this board in 2010, our groundwater quality protection strategy. That's been in place now since then, and we've had two-year work plans. The June 2011 work plan provided a 2-year work plan that addressed the high priority actions, and some of those incorporate a number of things, but the ones that were the highest priority are CV salts, the long-term irrigated lands program, and addressing our waste discharge requirement backlog. we did significant action on those high priorities, and so in the June 2013, we added a 2-year work plan to include the medium priority actions. While I'm going to talk about some of the program areas that were identified in the strategy individually, so I won't go over those here, some of the other highlights that we've been able to accomplish is one of the strategy approaches was to improve our access to the board and the transparency and of our actions. So we've increased the number of public outreach and public education. We've allocated a lot of resources of staff to go out to the various groups of the environmental justice groups and also the integrated regional water management groups as well. Some time ago, they changed the conditions for those to include water quality and environmental justice or DAC community issues. And so we allocated resources to make sure that those items were adequately addressed through these IRWMs. We have been trying diligently to have remote meeting access. We haven't been successful in that, but we at least now, starting in October of 2014, have our meetings webcast. The other thing that's on the plate for the groundwater strategy is an update to the strategy. We had put off updating the strategy because State Board was working on one, and we wanted to coordinate our efforts with them or just eliminate ours and roll into theirs. That's been stalled because of the SIGMA and other activities. So we are now moving to update that strategy, and we'll be bringing it to the board at the February meeting. Our waste discharge program is one of our largest regulatory programs in the board. It's the collect-all that covers for all the facilities that don't fit under the Title 27 dairies, irrigated lands. We have about 1,400 facilities in that program, which account for about 40% of all the facilities statewide. It incorporates wastewater treatment plants, industries, on-site septic systems, and other things like that. We have about 26 staff situated between the 3 offices in this program. And we now, in the most recent year, have been emphasizing and increasing our focus on the recycling of this water and improving or changing or revising our waste discharge requirements to accommodate that, especially in light of the drought conditions. This is a chart demonstrating our performance over the year of the number of waste discharge items that we've issued. Some are individual orders in the orange. The pinkish color are the waivers that we've identified, and the general orders are the blue or purple. In between 2010 and 2014, we had a real push to try and have staff move from individual orders to general orders. And that big push happened to be in the use of a couple of statewide orders, and we were successful in that. We are still looking for opportunities to move more individuals into general orders, and we're looking for opportunities. The State Board has adopted one order that will help us in looking at small wastewater treatment plants, and the State Board is also looking at a statewide order for wineries, which would help us reduce the number of individual discharge or waste discharge requirements that we would have to generate. That is a time savings for staff. It doesn't require zero work, but it's a lot less work than an individual order. One of the focuses of our program right now is on the recycled water. We're emphasizing the need. These are 3 pictures of that. At the top left is some purple pipe being installed, and I can't remember the name of the city. Sorry. In Clovis. On the bottom is a filling station at the Merced's filling station for the county or city of Merced. That fire hydrant, it looks like it's a fire hydrant, but it is purple. It's not red. I had to make sure of that with staff. So it's a purple fire hydrant. And they use these waters on construction sites and dust control. And so that's available for that, and it's recycled water use. And then the upper right picture is a purple pipe showing the use for irrigation water. It's a landscape in Kern County. You recently heard about the on-site water treatment system, or OTS policy, back in October at our board meeting. But this was a policy that was adopted by the state board in 2013 and put a lot of work on us and the local agencies throughout the state of California to update and improve their regulation of on-site treatment systems. These are septic systems and leach fields. There are about 1.2 million of these types of treatment systems in the state of California, and about half of those are in the Central Valley. This prescribes requirements for local agencies to develop a local agency management plan. These have historically been managed through our local agencies, and we don't want to change that, so we are working with them to have them approved. Staff has been developing tools with our with the directors of environmental health of the different counties to provide them a tool to help them develop their local agent management plans so that as they come to our office to review, they can be done in a quick manner. In fact, tomorrow, our first LAMP, local agency management plan, is on the agenda as an uncontested item for the county, Sacramento County. And I have been remiss, I wanted to point out the program manager names for all these programs. Eric Rapport in Fresno is over the OTS policy, and Lonnie Wass is the program manager for our waste discharge requirements, and he's in our Fresno office. Our site cleanup program, our program manager is Stuart Black in the Sacramento office. He is our new supervisor who replaced Duncan Austin. And he just started recently, and Stuart's in the front row, so why don't you wave to the board so they're familiar with you now. This is a site showing the board, a bar chart of the active sites in the Central Valley for this last year. We break it down by private sites and by our defense, the orange being of those sites that are under investigation. The key thing for here is we want to move things into remediation and closure. So we have the green is remediation, the yellow or white is monitoring, and the red is closed. We have just short of 1,400 active sites right now, with about 563 of those in site remediation, and this last year we closed 51 sites. We also have about 700 or just short of 800 sites now within the queue, waiting for the investigative or remediation site activities, or for staff to review to see if it needs to go into the site cleanup program, period. So we do have a backlog in this program. We have about 27.5 PYs dedicated to this activity. This is a graph. Our metrics for the state board for how we perform is based on two things: number of sites closed, and the remediation starts from moving from investigation into actual cleanup. And as you can see, we've had a steady increase in those sites over the years. And this is a chart demonstrating how we compare to the other regions. For our site, total active sites, we have about 28% of the workload over the whole state of California. And for those sites that are closed and moved to remediation, we account for 20% of those activities. So what is a site that goes in the cleanup program? Well, here is an example. This is the 4K Farms in Ripon, California. It was a 8,000 gallon tank that you see laying there on its side. It was being filled, it overpressurized, it was shot off of its foundation and right into the garage there, and with it was a spill of about 7,000 to 8,000 gallons of product that went into the soil that had to be investigated and remediated, and that's how this site became a cleanup site. So we have a number of these sites throughout the region. For next year, we see some increased movement in the Browns and redevelopment as a result of AB 440, which was enacted in 2013, or signed by the governor in 2013, which we lost our redevelopment agencies, but in doing that, AB 440 provided these authorities to the local agencies, cities and counties and housing authorities to have some of the authorities that were given to the the development agency so that that work continues. So that helps our board move that forward. And this last year, SB 445 was signed by the governor, which extended our underground storage tank program another 10 years. But in that, it also added a new fund for non-UST sites for monies to be spent on cleanup of those sites where we don't have, that have been orphan sites for a long time. And we have a number of those, and it include a variety of things, including our dry cleaners or nitrate issues or other things. Those are available. The site cleanup continues to work on evaluating petroleum sites. There's the cleanup sites that are petroleums for early closure in accordance with using the early closure policy as a guidance. And we also are following up on issues from the local water purveyors who have contaminated water supplies now, either for chromium 6 or other things that could be as a result of spills or leaks, or that could be subject to the site cleanup. We continue to follow up on those to make sure we're doing our due diligence that the appropriate party is addressing the issue. Our underground storage tank, Brian Newman in the Sacramento office is the program manager. This is a pretty well-developed program that's been in place since 1984, and it's now on its downward side of the slope in terms of a program. There are two key components to this program. There's leak prevention and detection, which is done predominantly at the local agency level, and the other one is the cleanup end of it, which we share between the regional boards and the local agencies. But many of those local agencies are closing their programs now, and those cases all get shifted back to the regional board when they do so. We have about 628 active cases in the regional board. That's down enough from a number of years ago, which accounts for about greater than 23% of the cases in the state. We have 15.5 PY assigned to this program. Two of the metrics that were measured by is closure and this is a graph illustrating how we've operated compared to the other regions in terms of closing our sites. In 2014-15, we accounted for 106 sites that were closed. And in closing these sites, over the life of those cleanup projects, we removed over 1.1 million pounds of petroleum hydrocarbons from the soil and groundwater. We have always been exceeding, since the early 2006, exceeding the closure rate of the rest of the state, and now you'll see as our graph, we're narrowing in to be about the same. Thanks to Brian, he took an early lead on trying to find ways to address some of our older cases that have been on the books for a long time. And so while you see a dip for the other part of the state, our activity just continued to increase. And Brian and his leadership and all the staff in the underground storage tank need to be given some kudos for doing a great job in getting these sites cleaned and closed. In terms of open versus closed, the light blue is open, the green is closed. Over the past, we have always been able to have, since 2006, our rate of closure has always exceeded our rate of open cases. We are always receiving new cases throughout the year. But in the recent years, we're seeing that decline as many of our cases for early closure are declining, and now the cases that are on the books are those that are going to take a lot more time before we have cleanup. And also, like I said, when we close down the local agencies, those projects come to us. If you are a data geek and you like to look up things on the internet and you go to the GeoTracker site, this last year we had over 100 sites referred to us from the local agencies that closed, and they're not considered old sites in GeoTracker when they're transferred. They're considered new sites, even though they may have been on the books for a number of years. So it looks as if we've added new sites, but we've just taken those sites on, and staff are now moving to move those into remediation.
I'm assuming when those sites come to us that they don't come with funding, is that correct?
Well, we're completely funded out of the tank fund.
The UST fund, okay.
Yes. As our cases lower, I mean, it just adds more to the staff's workload, but it's, as you see, we only have 638 compared to a couple thousand we had a few years ago. So it's not what I call manageable, but it's more manageable than it was in the past. But those sites have very little many of them have very little work done to them. So it's just like a brand new case. Our land disposal program, our program manager is Rob Busby out of the Sacramento office. And this is our real true regulatory program. We have regulations established in statute, and they have very prescriptive requirements that they must meet. It usually applies to active and closed landfills and our surface impoundments and waste piles. These are the sites that are prohibited from having an impact on groundwater. So especially our high-strength waste activities or things like landfills that we don't want them to go into our soils or groundwater. We have about 16 staff on this in this program addressing 175 facilities. And of those 175 facilities, 39 of them are actively receiving waste, so those are active landfills. Some of those sites, the 39 active sites, that's funded through tipping fees in part that are paid as people pay to go into the dump. Those pay for some of the tipping fees, pay for staff. Our land disposal program used to also include mines, and we pulled mines out to create a separate program area for that so we can put more focus and attention to mines. That happened between 2013 and 2014, or between those two fiscal years. So our numbers prior to 2013 reflect WDRs for mines as well. But in the last year, we adopted 13 waste discharge requirements and conducted 128 compliance inspections and construction inspections. In the land disposal, most of our inspections are dealing with sites inspections during the construction of the facility and also during rain events to make sure that there isn't any runoff from these sites. Oops. Oh, Jude, that was dumb. Okay, sorry. I hit end instead of. So some activities that we'll be facing next year. The State Board just adopted their general waste discharge requirements for composting facilities, which means that we'll have a number of things to do. We have known 59 existing sites that should be covered under the general order, and we are working to have them submit their NOI by August of 2016. That's required under the order. We may be getting some of those earlier. The NOI is basically the application. It requires they submit a bunch of information that needs to be reviewed by staff. We also have an additional 46 sites that need to be investigated to determine if they should seek coverage under the general order. The other activity that we have been doing and will continue to do on financial assurance is all of these sites that are in the land disposal program provide some form of financial insurance, whether it be a bond or cash, or it's held in a trust or another area of the board, so that if this site goes bankrupt or the owner just disappears from the site, we have the monies available to continue the cleanup or activities to close the sites appropriately so that they're not a threat to the environment or public health. Luckily, in reviewing of our waste discharge requirements, we have about 87% of those in place now, which means the remainders, we have to start working and revise our orders to make sure we get them in place. Our mining program, Marty Hartzell in the Sacramento office is a program manager for this under Rob Busby. Excuse me. You had a recent update for this at the October meeting, so I won't spend a lot of time, but we are currently have an oversight of 120 sites in the region. We have many more abandoned sites that we still need to address or focus on. Of the 120, we have some in remediation, and we do that with about 5 staff. This last year, we issued 2 cleanup and abatement orders, 2 waste discharge requirements, and 15 compliance inspections were conducted by staff, and we continue to coordinate with the multi-agency group on mines and trying to address the most highest priority mines first. We have many issues and challenges to us. We have the Walker mine, which is the CAO by ARCO against ARCO that is now in petition, so it's on hold. So while that petition is working through the State Board and the courts, staff will be continuing to provide oversight of the Walker mine. We also had that sudden discharge potential analysis requested by the Department of Conservation. This is in result to the gold Gold King accident. It was in Colorado. To make sure that we've addressed all of those. On the picture shows the Argonaut mine tailings involving the city of Jackson, or is it Jackson? Yes, thank you. So we've identified 7 mines that may have sudden discharge potential, and an additional 26 sites that have drainage but may not have a sudden discharge potential, but we'll be investigating those further and working with the federal and state agencies to make sure that they receive the highest priority in addressing those potentials for discharges. We are also actively, since we now have staff dedicated to just mine, to doing responsible party searches so that we can identify parties to begin moving these mines from abandoned and continuing to be a source of potential harm to the environment and water quality, and bringing in responsible parties to start addressing those issues associated with the mines. Our oil fields, you've heard a lot about oil fields over the last year, but this is a program that has had significant jump in resources. We started about 1.5 years ago with about 1 to 2 PYs in this program. We now have 19.7. We have 4 different areas under this program. We have our sumps, which is associated with well drilling, the actual drilling of the well. It creates a drilling mud or a slurry that needs to be disposed of. That was back about 1 year ago in December, when we were in front of the board to tell them that they no longer could use the waiver for discharging of that drilling mud to unlined sumps. We thought the world was coming apart at that time. It ended up being just the tip of the iceberg for our issues with oil fields, unfortunately. That program has seemed to go well. We're using the statewide order for de minimis low-threat discharges, and where they apply, they use that order. Otherwise, they no longer discharge to unlined sumps. They dispose of it either lined or find some other way of disposal. Our produced water pond is a topic of much discussion these days. We have a lot of them. Staff has been busy on a work plan, implementing a work plan around that. I'll talk about that in a minute. But as outcome of this use of produced water, we have our food safety panel that you heard about last year for the reuse of some of this produced water for irrigation of crops. And also that the State Board is working to form an interagency group. Recently, as a result of the SB4, the DOGGR, the Division of Oil, Gas, Geothermal Resources, DOGGR, they had a study done about around hydraulic fracturing, the use of ponds, and they found that there was a multimedia impact that could be realized from sumps, not just what happens with water quality, but air quality and harm to the species or birds and other species. So State Board is working to form an interagency group to address these issues identified in that study conducted for the DOGGR. Another component, ponds are one way for oil companies to discharge their produced water. Another way for discharging of their waste is through the underground injection control program. That has also been a program under close scrutiny at the US EPA and Cal EPA and the governor's office. And we've been involved in that as well. This is where they have can, through a permit, inject into the deep injection wells, and they have to do them into exempt groundwater basins. There's been some determination that some of these injection wells were into aquifers that were not exempt and could be or are potentially harming the groundwater quality. So staff is now actively engaged in that. And then the last program is the well stimulation program, or what's normally referred to as hydraulic fracturing. And we've been engaged in that. That's predominantly been by State Board, and now we're being more brought into that activity since we have additional resources. Our oil field ponds work plan that was put together last year had staff do a lot of activity. We had to investigate and do an inventory of the ponds, and then from that, then find out which ponds were regulated or unregulated. So this is a chart of all the things that we've done over the last year. We've been able to identify about 326 facilities that have ponds, and of those sites, there are over 1,000 ponds identified. 716 of those have been found to be active, and 358 of those were inactive ponds, meaning they haven't received waste and they're not anticipated to receive waste in the future. Not all of those ponds are regulated, so that's been one of our big issues. And some of the ones that are regulated, we don't believe that their waste discharge requirements need to be updated. So staff has been very active putting out orders for information to both active and inactive pond operators. We've also been looking at some facilities that claim they have no ponds, sending them letters to make sure they verify that they actually do not. And at least at the outcome of some of these letters, we have identified additional ponds that are included in the number above. We have promised of those that are unregulated to get them under an enforcement order as soon as possible while we're developing general orders to properly regulate them. And we've been successful in getting many of them out. I show 182 unregulated active ponds and only 44 CAOs, but one operator may have multiple ponds, so one CAO may cover multiple ponds. So by the end of December, all of our unregulated ponds will have cleanup and abatement orders issued to them to put them under an order, and we are moving towards doing issues for cleanup and abatement orders for those that are regulated but have insufficient waste discharge requirements, so that we get them moving ahead on activities to address the board's concerns. Our confined animal facility program involves mostly dairy. That's what the board's heard about for the past few years, but we do have some other activities. We have about 1,300 dairies. This is a oil fields program manager Del Harvey in the Fresno office, and our confined animal facilities is Doug Pattison on our Fresno office. 1,300 dairies now in the board. This is down from the number in 2007 when we first adopted the order, that we have fewer dairies, but we have more cows. So the waste is still there. It's just not over fewer dairies. We also have about 800 to 1,000 feedlots, which are either cattle for feed for us, or it's heifer facilities that raise cattle for dairies. And so these are facilities that need to be regulated by the board, and we are now in the process of generating a general order for them. We also have around 200 poultry facilities. Some of the poultry facilities are for eggs, others are for meat. And then we have some swine and goat facilities, but they're very few in our region. But those are, if they fit the definition of combined animal facilities, they'll be regulated. We have about 12 people separated between Fresno and Sacramento to address these facilities. In our Fresno area, we have the larger dairies with an average of 1,800 cows per dairy. In the northern part of our region, we have the smaller dairies of around 700 to 900 cattle per dairy, or cows per dairy. We've been busy with our compliance inspections, and we've doing more inspections to verify that the nutrient management plans are being actually implemented. Last year, we inspected 437 sites. We've been very busy with the representative monitoring program with the dairy cares and the dairy industry. We have 3 years of data, and staff's been reviewing that. We've been identifying that there is definite need for improvement in some of their practices, and we'll continue to work with them on that. Two of the primary areas we're concerned with are ponds, especially ponds that are, the bottoms of them are within groundwater. And the other practice is the fact that they aren't monitoring their manure as it's applied to the land, so it's difficult to assess just how much manure or how much nitrogen is going on their property onto their cropland, and so therefore we'll be working with them to investigate and work and start addressing those issues over the next year or two. And like I said, we're going to be doing some general orders to extend to our poultry facilities and our bovine lots or our feed lots. That should be coming to the board in 2016 around April. Our surface water protection program involves our timber harvest, our marijuana cannabis cultivation, the irrigated lands, our NPDES program, stormwater, and our 401 certs. Our NPDES program is a federally mandated program. We are a delegated state for that. The authority is established under the Federal Clean Water Act, Section 402. Since we're a delegated state, our legal statutory authority is done under the Clean California Water Code. We have about 125 individual orders. We have many general order enrollees, but 125 individual permits, or about 24% of the permits in the state. Of those, we have 52 majors, or that they discharge greater than 1 million gallons per day of treated wastewater, and 73 minors. And we handle this in our 3 offices with about 15.5 PYs. We've had issues with backlogs on our NPDES permits. We were able to get our backlog down to 0 back in the early days of 2006, 2007. But that happened in 5 years' time. These permits, unlike our waste discharge requirements that can go on for a number of years, our permits are 5 years, which meant that we just created a new mountain in 5 years. So under Adam and now then Diana and then Nicole, we have figured a way to even out our permits. So our goal is to, for the last few years and the coming years, to do 21 permits a year, and that will, over time, get rid of our backlog and level out so that we have a manageable workload every year. And we're achieving that. So we've done a good job at trying to minimize that. And EPA and State Board has been on board with our proposed plan. These are the different activities we've done over the years. The purple are our enforcement orders. We do use enforcement orders, time schedule orders, cleanup, cease and desist orders to provide dischargers time, and so that's not done through our enforcement activity. It's done through it's a regulatory enforcement order. We have various amendments that need to be done throughout the year, and they seem like they're so easy, but they're not. They take a lot of time. We have some rescissions that take some time to do. And then, of course, our renewals and our new permits are in the blue. I'm sorry, the red is rescissions, the green are amendments, and our purple is the enforcement. We have some priorities for next year that we need to deal with. We have our litigation with CSPA over our regional sand permit that was adopted in 2010. Our remaining issue on that happens to be the thermal plant exceptions, which the board will be hearing about. We need to continue to eliminate our backlog, which is the plan in place. We're also looking at ways to improve our efficiencies and permitting activities, which I'll talk about Lean Six Sigma near the end of the presentation, but using some of those tools we learned through our Lean Six Sigma to find efficiencies in our permitting activities. We're also looking to develop a general permit for some of our NPDES facilities. We currently have about 61, I call them advanced treatment, but here they're called tertiary treatment, 61 facilities throughout the regional board that have advanced treatment. They provide something greater than secondary of our 125 individual permits. 38 of these are majors and 23 are minors. 36 of the 61 sites provide even advanced. Now, tertiary here is defining filtration for pathogen. Anything above that filtration, like nitrification, denitrification, and things like that, we consider advanced treatment facilities. So we have 36 of them. Out of that, about 26 of them are to discharges to to streams where there are no opportunities for any type of dilution. And so these facilities are responsible for meeting the effluent limits at the point of discharge, and they're very strict requirements. So they already meet Title 22 requirements for reuse recycle at the point of discharge. And therefore we believe we can take those 26 types of facilities and put them under a general order. So that would eliminate our need for, take our 125 individuals down to 99 individual orders and one general order to cover these. It'd be just a time saver for staff, and I think better for the dischargers as well. Our stormwater program, NPDES is Nicole Morgan in the Sacramento office. Our NPDES stormwater program is Brian Smith in our Reading office. He's the program manager. And this is also a Clean Water Act program. It's a different section of the Clean Water Act. It's Section 402. Section 402P of the Clean Water. So it's still under NPDES as the program, but it's a special section. It was done with the amendments of the Clean Water Act in 1987, so this program's been around for a while. It involves construction activities, industrial activities, and municipal activities, and we have just short of 10 people throughout the 3 offices to implement this program. Our construction and industrial activities, these are done through permits issued by the state board, so they're statewide permits, but our staff do the implementation and enforcement of these orders. Construction permit really is addressing all activities around construction that could result in impacts to our receiving water, but the predominant issue happens to be sediment, and you've had a few of these come before the board before in the past for enforcement actions. With the drought, we haven't had as much. Now that we have some rain going on, we'll see how our construction sites fare in terms of compliance. We have about 1,500 sites a year. That varies depending on the construction activities, and we conduct about 600 inspections a year of these sites. Industrial facilities, those are very well defined in the federal regulations on who needs to be in the program or not. That number stays pretty steady throughout the time. It all depends on the economy and businesses that stay or don't stay. We have about 1,800 facilities, and we conduct about 200 inspections a year of this site. Our municipal stormwater program is it's a point source, but it's more dealing with more diffuse points, sources of pollutants. It has to do with the whole municipal area of a community, say the city of Sacramento or the county of Sacramento. It's all the runoffs from the streets into the storm drain systems that end up going into our receiving waters. While these are used, the storm drain systems are used to prevent flooding and to protect the public safety in regards to flooding, they are also some significant sources of pollutions to our surface waters, and EPA and the state board has identified our non-point source discharges, and this is considered sort of a non-point source, diffuse discharge, as our most significant sources of pollution for our waters today. We have about 31 large, medium municipalities that have been regulated by this state since the early 1990s, if not before. And those are covered, I believe, under 8 permits, under some area-wide permits, and we have a couple of individual communities under our permits. MS4s, it's the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, 4 S's, that's why MS4. In around 2000, the EPA amended their regulations to expand to small municipals, and so we have about 126 small municipals. Under the medium and large, we have individual orders issued by this board. The state board has a statewide general order to cover the municipals, so we are responsible for the implementation of the small MS4. Regardless of the type or size, all of them have to implement stormwater management plans that identify different program areas and what they're going to do, what management practices they're going to implement in order to address and eliminate or reduce the amount of pollutants entering our surface waters. We also have an effective prohibition for non-storm waters in that, meaning waters that aren't stormwater that are in the storm drain, irrigation waters, or anything else. They have to effectively prohibit those. They either have to properly regulate them so that they're not a problem, or prohibit them from entering their storm drain system. We are currently working on a region-wide MS4 permit for the region to get rid of the 8 medium. For the large and mediums where we have individual orders, we're trying to implement a region-wide permit to remove the need for 8 individual and have all the MS4, large and medium MS4s fall under this region-wide permit, with the option of the small MS4s to seek coverage under it if they want to. The focus of this is to allow the dischargers to look at what are the true water quality issues associated in their areas, and then develop their program around those issues so that we can see water quality improvements over time. It's kind of changing the focus of do things everywhere and moving it back into tell us where the problems are and what are you going to do to address it. So their priorities and their resources will be spent on working to improve water quality. I can tell you before I was the EO, I worked with a contractor for US EPA, and we did audits, and municipalities were spending a lot of money to implement these programs, but we weren't seeing a lot of results in the receiving water. So there really needs to be a change in the focus of how we implement these programs. The Water Quality CERT program, again, that's Brian Smith in the Redding office is our program manager. over this. Now, this is another Clean Water Act program. It's not under 402. This is a 401 program. Anyone who wants to do a dredge or fill project in the waters of the U.S. or a jurisdictional water needs to seek a permit from the Army Corps of Engineer, and if they do, they have to come to us for a certification. And that's this program. This program was recently audited, and so we've been or a couple of years ago audited, and they found some issues, and we're trying to find some efficiencies through this program as a result of that audit, working with State Board. We have just short of 7 PYs throughout the 3 offices, or staff members working on this program. We have about 250 applications received each year, and we issue about 250 certs. We're doing our best to minimize or improve our efficiencies around the application and issuance of certifications so that we can begin to have staff in the field more to, once certification, to verify that they're actually implementing the measures they said they were going to do. That's where the audit found a shortfall. We haven't had a lot of enforcement around certification, and so our goal is to get our backlog under control, get it reduced, get some efficiencies put in so we're not spending as much time issuing certifications so that we can use some of that staff time to be out in the field. Our irrigated lands program, it's Sue McConnell's our program manager here in the Sacramento office, and here's where I'll talk a little bit about surface and groundwater. We finally have got an estimate of 6.6 million acres that will be enrolled eventually completely under the irrigated lands program. We have about 35,000 grower operations we currently regulate, and we are dealing with 14 agricultural coalitions to implement the long-term program. We do that with about 18 staff members throughout the 3 offices. Most of the staff, we have 1 staff in Reading, the rest are in Fresno and Reading. Under our groundwater program, it's a real focus right now for our board. We are dealing with the coalitions and getting their groundwater assessment reports, which will identify their high vulnerability areas. The little map on the left or right is showing the areas where we have shown exceedances of nitrate issues in the valley. From that assessment report, we'll generate groundwater management plans, similar to our surface water management plans, where the coalitions will tell us what they're going to do to address the issues identified in the high vulnerability areas. We are busy working with our coalitions. We now have 2 groups of coordinated groups of coalition members, one further south and then the northern part of our region, working on developing their management practice evaluation program. And staff is busy working with those 2 groups in order to move that program further forward for them to do the evaluation to see how effective their programs are at protecting groundwater quality. And the next step is also a groundwater trend monitoring program being designed, and we're working with the coalitions to develop that as well. Back on surface water, we've got a number of years worth of data, and as a result, we find that of the data we've collected, 93% of that data shows that they're below or meeting water quality objectives or our trigger numbers. We do have some exceedances, about 7%, and of that 7%, a majority of those are in E. coli or physical parameters such as EC or dissolved oxygen, toxicity, metals, nutrients, and pesticides further down. We have management plans for most of these being developed. E. coli, some have wanted to submit E. coli. I've been trying to work with the coalitions as a group to try and have an E. coli management plan that's done with consistency throughout the region. But if I can't seem to get that going, then I'll have staff move to get the individual coalitions to do something about it in short order. We've had over 740 active management plans since the beginning of, since 2010 or 2008 when they were all approved. And from that, we've approved or completed 141 of those management plans. About 2/3 of those approved plans were pesticides and toxicity, or the ones that are completed are dealing with pesticides and toxicity, and the rest are dealing with, I'm sorry, 2/3 of the management plans of the 740 are dealing with pesticides and toxicity, and the others are physical parameters and metals. Our enrollment's been up in this program since 2012 with the adoption of our long-term program. We've gone up 21% since then, and that number should increase as we continue our non-filer search. Having that enrollment, we also, that includes increased funding for the coalitions, we believe, to help support the water quality monitoring requirements required through both the surface and groundwater and the development of the management plans. We've also increased our enforcement over the last year, and some of our penalties are now increasing significantly for those who do not file for coverage under the Irrigated Lands Program. And to date, we've assessed a total of $622,000 in penalties for most predominantly non-filing of under the ag orders. Of course, our priorities, again, getting the assessment reports completed and done and management plans developed and in place and implemented. Moving forward quickly on our management practices evaluation, because so much of that depends. So many times the coalitions would like us to consider that their practices are effective, but the proof is in the data, and we need to have the data. And to get the trend monitoring plans in place. For surface water, our highest priorities are our sediment and erosion control, to get the sediment out of our waters, and to complete the management plans. And enforcement will continue to focus on non-enrollment, but we're also going to begin doing some enforcement on general order compliance. Our forest activity program, which was formerly known as Timber, is our Angela Wilson is our program manager in the Redding office. The Redding and Sacramento offices have the predominant activities, with Redding the most in terms of forest activities. This program's been through a lot of changes with the adoption or the passage of AB 1492, which is addressing non-federal lands. It created the Timber Regulation and Forest Restoration Fund, and also added a number of requirements on staff. In addition to just reviewing timber harvest programs on sites, they now have to work with other state agencies to complete a number of tasks related to ecological performance, including developing of performance measures, and Angela Wilson has been working with those agencies to develop those. As a result of AB, our projects received over the project involve about 200 non-federal projects. Those are subject to 1492. Our federal projects, about 40 of them, those are on U.S. Forest Service land and BLM or whatever other federal lands. And then we have about 800 projects that come in a year that need review, that are emergency, those that are not required any type of environmental review, usually in response to fires, but staff has to do a quick review of those to get them turned around. We have a distribution of 11 PYs. We've had, because of AB 442, we've had a significant growth in our timber resources, from about 5.4 people a few years ago to now over to 11 PYs. That's been a big help for our Redding staff. Because of that, we've been able to conduct more inspections, going from a low of about 60 back in 04-05 to almost 200 here in 14-15. Our field presence is always really important. We've been having some successes in the 14-15. We had a cleanup and abatement order for Rubicon Trail, which was a really controversial item here a number of years ago. Those activities in that have been successful, and we've been able to rescind that cleanup and abatement order for Rubicon Trail. We had a similar issue on Doe Mill Road. There's a picture of it there on the left for the Bureau of Land Management's land, and we've been able to successfully address that issue and rescind that cleanup and abatement order as well. We've also spent a lot of staff time on post-fire assessment these last couple of years, and we don't expect that to end anytime soon. Some of the things we plan to do in the Forest Activities Program is to develop a federal non-point source permit that would address U.S. Forest and BLM lands in the region, and would address timber harvest and a few other activities that are involved on those lands. We will continue to be active in our post-fire assessment and recovery, working through our BEAR teams and other interagency groups. We're also working to address the executive order by the governor dealing with expediting of harvesting drought-killed trees. That would require our review, and we don't want to be the agency to hold that up, because dealing with that then may address some of the fire issues in the future. Our cannabis cultivation program, you've heard a lot about this recently, but that's Clint Snyder currently, and I'm waiting to hear who he's going to pass it off to, but he's right now our program manager for that. With the Budget Act, the recent Budget Act, we were able to add 4 people in Redding to do our pilot program for cannabis cultivation. Clint and others have been very successful in developing this program, and we're looking forward to hopefully expanding that to move it beyond the Reading office. We've been working very closely with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and also CAL FIRE, but especially the Fish and Wildlife Department. We've got a very good working relationship, and I have to credit Clint a lot with building that relationship. It's exceptional how we work together to address this issue. We've done a lot of things over the last year through Clint's leadership. We've done extensive public outreach and education. We have the NMOU with these other state agencies. We've contracted and are now implementing the cannabis identification and prioritization system. We've developed and now you've adopted a general order addressing cannabis cultivation. In addition to that, staff has conducted 26 inspections. 18 of those were under warrant, which required a lot more time on the part of Clint to get the warrant from the courts. 11 notices of violation, 4 13-267 orders, 4 cleanup and abatement orders, and 1 ACL, and another one that was on this agenda that was pulled that's forthcoming. In the future, we're going to continue the public outreach and education, especially now with the permit and trying to get enrollment under that order. We'll continue our multi-agency coordination, and of course, we will always continue our enforcement activities. Our planning activities involving CV Salt, Swamp, Delta, Non-Point Source, and our TMDLs. I guess I should ask Dr. Long. I still have more to go. I don't know if you want to take a break or you want me to finish.
About how much longer?
A while.
A while. That's a good quantitative assessment. Let's take a break for concession.
Sorry. Your staff provided the stuff. Thank you, Dr. Longley. So, Adam just made me laugh, so I'm sorry. I'm trying to get over this.
Adam, between Carmen and Adam, my day is just hilarious.
Okay. Basin planning. So the basin planning TMDL. So Jeannie Chilcott is our program manager in the Sacramento office for this program. And we have about 19 staff individuals, PYs, assigned to basin planning and TMDL. And some of the activities included in this are the integrated report for the 303D list. This is a requirement of the Clean Water Act. And it is a listing that is supposed to be done about every 3 years by the Act. And we don't quite meet every 3 years, but whenever a water body gets listed on this, it's considered an impaired water body, and we have to do something about it. And traditionally, most of that was dealing with developing TMDLs or a control program. And so those activities, the TMDL development implementation and the integrated report, are done in the Sacramento office. It's not done in our other offices, so that's a Sacramento activity. We have 2 basin plans in the Sacramento, and for the Central Valley Regional Water Board, we have the Sacramento-San Joaquin River Basin plans, and we have the Tulare Lake Basin plan. The Sacramento-San Joaquin River Basin plans are out of the Sacramento office, and the Tulare Lake Basin plan is out of the Fresno office. But of course, we work closely together between the offices to address these. Since early 2000, our activities on basin plans have gone up considerably, and since 2006, we've adopted over 15 or more than double than what we did the years before. Basin plan, that is a lot of activity. Basin planning and TMDLs, the development and adoption of TMDLs by this board is a basin plan action, so that's a basin plan amendment. Anytime we revise or change the basin plan, it's a basin plan amendment. Those are not activities that take 6 months or 12 months. Those are activities that usually take years to do. So, but in doing these through the control programs, we've identified over 100 impaired water bodies through these amendments to the basin plan over the years. Some of the key activities we completed in 2015 in basin planning was, one, the adoption of the amendment to remove the designation of MUN, or the municipal and domestic from 12 constructed ag drains. This all started with the Live Oak NPDS permit and resulted in a basin plan amendment to address a number of small communities that discharged ag drains. These amendments were approved by this board and through the state board, and I believe they've gone through AOAL. I can't remember if they have or not. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. So, yes or no?
I don't know either.
Okay,
I was
then-
just going to let
okay.
you know.
All right, thank you. Okay, just be quiet then. No, just kidding, just kidding. I'm kidding. I don't want to get off my train of thought here.
If you need an attorney for hostile work environment, call me.
Hey, he does it to me. No. So anyway, well, let me get back on track. I can't remember what I was saying. Anyway, so we've also done a number of we also did a triennial review for both of the basin plans, the Tulare Lake and the Sacramento San Joaquin. And through those review processes, we identify priorities for future basin plan amendments. And that included a number of priority basin plans, our TMDLs, specifically identifying some of our pesticide TMDLs, our CV salts development and implementation, and of course the 2014 implementation of the Delta Strategic Plan developed in 2014. Through 2015, we had completed a number of TMDLs that included some of our highest priority areas, including the Delta. It included the San Joaquin River Basin for selenium, mercury, and nutrients in the Clear Lake, and mercury in the Delta. We have, and that addressed over 109 listings. Coming in 2016, we have a couple of other listings or TMDLs that will be developed. One is a statewide mercury reservoir and the pyrethroid TMDL, which will address an additional 60 impaired listings on the 303D list. We have been able to show some water quality improvements as a result of our activities. And over the past years, we were able to delist 24 of our water bodies. Some of these are shown, those blue lines or blue dots on the map to the right are showing those water bodies that have been delisted. They include the diazinon TMDL, the delisting of diazinon in the Sacramento, Feather, and San Joaquin rivers, metals in the Sacramento River, bacteria in Whiskeytown, and selenium in the San Joaquin River. We have more delistings to come over the next year as we do our listing activities this next year, but we have about 500 more to go. 2015, we were able to complete our peer review. We have a TMDL for pyrethroid. This is a very contentious TMDL. It's the development of based on new science, new objectives for pyrethroids. It's proposing or looking to propose some objectives that will be very difficult to meet for our PUTWs in particular. And so that we have a technical report that went out for peer review, and we have those comments back, and we expect, we continue to work with a stakeholder group, but can expect to bring that to the board in 2016. We have staff working on with other stakeholders on a statewide urban pesticide our staff led the charge for a statewide urban pesticide framework that would be in response to some of the pesticide we find in stormwater runoff. It was through our stormwater initiative at the statewide that this was developed, and that was led by Danny McClure in our office for pesticides. We also continue to work with other regional boards and the state board and other stakeholders in coordination with US EPA on their pesticide programs and on DPR, Department of Pesticide Regulations, on how to improve the regulation or the establishment of regulation or registrations of pesticides to better protect water quality. In 2016, we will work with State Board on our management agreement with the Department of Pesticide Regulation that has not been updated since 1997. It's due for some update, so we'll be working to update that with them. And also, we're looking to find ways to improve our efficiencies in the TMDL program. There is a way to do that. So most of them that get listed on 303D list, a TMDL is required unless we can identify a control program that will essentially do the same thing. And we've been very successful in our irrigated lands program through our water quality management plans at improving and some of our water bodies as a result of the actions by our coalitions and the growers. In particular, Diaron, which was listed, and they had to do in management plans for all of those that were listed for Diaron, and recent monitoring has shown that those water bodies are no longer impaired. So we will look for all those types of opportunity, whether it's ag or other control programs, to try to not to avoid addressing the issue, but finding other tools that are not as time intensive as TMDL development. Our non-point source program, which our program manager for that is Michelle Wood in the Sacramento office. This is a federal program. It's done through the federal 319H. That's a citation of the Clean Water Act that created it. It's really a focus on dealing with implementation of TMDLs where the primary source of the cause is non-point source. So it provides funding for staff time and grant monies through this funding of the 319H. Over the years, we have seen fewer and fewer resources being allocated to this program, going from about 5 a few years ago to 3.4 now being assessed. We do use our staff in the non-point source for other things besides just TMDL implementation. Activities involve attending the Integrated Regional Water Management Group meetings and also dealing with the erosion and sediment control from activities like the Battle Creek Watershed or the shooting ranges or other things that are considered non-point source where we don't have a regulatory program to put them under. Our non-point source staff will step up and address those things. The Clear Lake TMDL program implementation, that's a picture of Clear Lake when it's in full algae bloom, which is, I just really want to go jump in that water right away. But we have a program in place to try to address that algae growth in that. We have, through grant programs, we've been able to issue grants to the Forest Service for their storm proofing of their roads on Forest Service lands, and also for the Bureau of Land Management for their lands for sediment reduction. A lot of the nutrients that are put into this lake are brought in through the sediments that are discharged into the lake. And also the fact that the sediments reduce the amount of available oxygen, so that helps that. Cyanobacteria, the microtoxins that can cause some pretty severe health risks to humans and actually have killed animals. We have had an outbreak in the Clear Lake area, so our staff are now working on a multi-agency group to address this, and they will continue to work on that to find ways to notify individuals or the public when there is an outbreak of this in the lake, but also to try and find ways to address it to make sure that it doesn't happen. We have the West Side IRWM, or Integrated Regional Monitoring Plan, that are putting together watershed planning for both the Cache Creek, Clear Lake, and Puda Creek areas. We continue to work with them in ways to address the issues of the watershed and improved water quality. And also we are providing a lot of assistance, especially in the Clear Lake area, for their post-fire monitoring assistance. Our surface water ambient monitoring program. This is Ann Littlejohn is our program manager in the Sacramento office. This is a program that's developed to sample our surface waters to develop or determine the quality and also to assess the trends of water quality throughout the region. Here is a bar graph showing the number of analysis done each year and how many site visits were conducted. Anytime staff visits the sites in the field, for whatever reason, for either a visual assessment or collect a sample, that's considered a site visit. The number of analytical procedures done varies by year, and it really just depends on the procedures that they're proposing at the time and the cost. So it's low one year because if toxicity testing is much higher cost than EC or others. So that depends on that. A lot of the samples are collected by our own swamp surface water ambient monitoring program, or we also do a collaborative effort with the Department of Water Resources and some water at the Sacramento Watershed Group. We have some program priorities in the swamp program. One of that is the participation and providing some of the resources to do the toxicity testing through our Delta RMP, Regional Monitoring Plan, and also assisting in monitoring in the Battle Creek watershed area. We have some ongoing ambient monitoring and that has been going on for years now, including the DWR, our Department of Water Resources collaboration, our Safe to Swim activities that you can access through our website, and our basin rotational monitoring, which we do for trend monitoring. We have a number of special initiatives underway, and I'll talk a little bit about some of these. Others I'll just either just briefly speak to. Our statewide reservoir mercury TMDL, which Patrick Morris is heading up along with Region 2, that involves about 60 or 70 reservoirs throughout the state. Many of those are in the Central Valley. You're going to be hearing more about this in February, so I won't take a lot of this time now. But this program has been underway for a number of years. It's diverted our staff away from our upstream of the Delta TMDL development for mercury and was diverted to the statewide reservoir. We do have a number of our reservoirs in the Central Valley that are impaired for mercury, and so they've been taking the lead in developing this program. And hopefully in the next year we will have put this one to rest and staff can be brought back to work on our upstream mercury TMDL. CV salts, you have heard a lot about CV salts, but we've done a lot in the last year. We're anticipating bringing the management plan to the board in 2016. But some of the things we've done that are critically important is the development of our, what we refer to as S-salts. It's the Strategic Salt Accumulation Land and Transport Study, a nice acronym. It's really about looking at in-basin and out-of-basin and maybe in a combination of the two on how to address the salt buildup in the valley to look for sustainability and maybe balance in inputs and outputs. The other one is NIMS, the nitrate implementation measures, looking at our legacy nitrate issue, and looking at ways that we can treat or remove or address or remediate or control nitrates, and that's being the subject of that as well. And those two programs there will play a key component on what we develop and recommend through our salt and nitrate management plan. The CV salts has been having a lot of discussions about the legacy nitrate issue and also salts, but developing alternative compliance strategies and how we might progress with those. We have a number of special studies ongoing right now to just see, because of the size of the Central Valley and being able to address the issue, we've been doing these smaller study areas to see how well they would work in a plan within a plan approach within CV salts. And so we have a number of things going on, and especially in seeing how well an alternative compliance strategy would work. These are things being discussed to amend our basin plan to to provide the board additional tools. They have their existing tools, those will remain in place, but additional tools to allow some flexibility to the board to address some of these very pervasive problems that don't seem to have any easy solutions, where some of our traditional ways of approaching water quality may not work so well. But to do some of these things, we have a prioritization. And with each step, it increases in the length of time that we will achieve the results. Safe drinking water is the top priority. If we are going to take a long time to reduce our loadings and to really manage to restore our groundwater basins in the valley, they need time, but we need to provide people safe drinking before that time's allowed. So some of these strategies are considering that. The next one is through our current programs and additional programs to reduce the existing loadings so that we're not continuing to add excess nitrates or salts to our groundwaters. And then over time, looking at how those reduced loadings and other activities eventually will end to manage restoration over time, and I'm talking a long time, to restore our basins in the valley.
A long time is in multiple decades.
Well, 100 to 200 years, yes.
Exactly.
Things that we just can't really think about, but we have to. So, one of the things we're looking at is how we do this. We're proposing management zones. So we have a study on looking at the use and how we would implement a management zone. And that's one of the studies we're looking at right now. Another one is do we have the appropriate uses designated for our water bodies? And especially the MUN. We just had a basin plan amendment for addressing some 12 constructed ag drains. We're looking at how can we develop a program or you've heard about this, a designation or a framework by which we identify ag-dominated water bodies and how the MUN applies to them. And that the board has heard about that, and that will be coming in before the board in 2016. We also have the Lower San Joaquin River Salt and Boron Objectives, which is establishing objectives implementation program for upstream of the Vernalis, which was a program implemented many years ago by this board. They've been working on a number of things, looking at various objectives for livestock and the appropriate objective for ag, for salt. And also, they're also looking at developing a policy involving extended dry periods when we go through a drought. The drought results in increased concentrations, not so much loading, but increased concentration of certain constituents. So these are all things that are being done through these smaller groups to see how they play and work out into a larger policy making process for the board. We have the Delta Regional Monitoring Program that's being led by, Adam's taking the lead on this with staff, Patrick Morse now. Patrick Morse is assisting him. We've had a lot of success in this program in the last year. It's been a program that has been near and dear to my heart and been working on for a number of years. This year we finally, through a stakeholder program group led by them and a steering committee, we actually now have a monitoring design and an annual work plan laid out and in place and being implemented now. We have a number of active participants now that are contributing funding to the program. This year we implemented early in the spring a pathogen monitoring program, and later on in the summer we added toxicity and pesticides, and next year we'll be expanding that to include nutrients and mercury. The Stockton Deep Water Channel was a program in place way back in 2005. It was in response to the extreme exceedances of our DO conditions in the deep water channel. Nearly 50% of the time we had exceedances of our objectives in that area. We've implemented a control program. It also included some upgrades to treatment plants, the City of Stockton in particular treatment plant, to remove their ammonia, which was depleting the ammonia in the water. We also implemented an aeration system, sort of made a fish tank out of our deep water channel. It's been very successful. It's been a joint venture between the port and other stakeholders. And it's been so successful that they are now, we recommend continuing that, and the Port of Stockton and the other stakeholders are now going to be implementing a new aeration agreement in 2016. We have a nutrient research plan. It was recommended by the Delta Stewardship Council for the regional board to develop a nutrient study plan to determine whether nutrient water quality objectives were needed for the Delta, and that potential nutrient-related problems included increased abundance and distribution of large invasive aquatic plants like the water hyacinths, increased frequency and abundance of harmful algal blooms, the cyanobacterias, and decrease in the phytoplankton abundance and shift in the alga species composition. The Stakeholder and Technical Advisory Group was established in December of 2014 and has been meeting regularly throughout 2015. Science work groups were formed to review the status of the science on each nutrient-related problem. 2 white papers were produced by the science groups on invasive aquatic plants and harmful alga blooms. These documents include what is known and summarize what is known and what needs to be determined before it can be concluded that nutrients cause or contribute to each of these problems. A 3rd white paper was developed by a modeling science work group that provided recommendations on the type of models that would be needed to assess stakeholders' nutrient management questions. In early 2016, a joint nutrient workshop with Region 2 is being planned to assess the role of nutrients in the decrease of phytoplankton abundance and shifts in the alga species composition. Recommendations from the white papers in the workshop will be collated and summarized in a nutrient research plan that will be available for review next year. And the picture is a picture of a back slough of the Delta and the impacts of the water hyacinths on those water bodies. This has a significant impact on many things. One, it cannot be easily, boats cannot get through these water bodies, but it also impacts the available oxygen for our fish. And our fish can drown as a result of not having oxygen available for them. So this is a very big concern for the Water Board. We also have the Delta Methyl Mercury TMDL. I'm not going to spend any, you'll hear all about this in February. So just to let you know that we've made progress in terms of our methyl mercury studies and our exposure reduction activities. Those are currently underway and making good progress. We have some new and emerging programs going on. Our Battle Creek Watershed Plan you heard about last meeting with the workshop and the field tour. This is Battle Creek is a 247-acre mixed-use watershed, some timber harvest, some general county roads and whatnot. This is also, the Battle Creek is also a key habitat for the endangered salmonids, thank you, and is a critical component of the path to recovery for these species in the Central Valley. And the watershed was subject to a fire back in 2012. And as a result, the watershed has been prone to significant erosion. And the Battle Creek has been under some remediation and restoration, and that the heavy sedimentation from the runoff last year took out a lot of the improvements that were made. And so we're working on developing with the EPA and the various parties in the watershed to develop a watershed-based plan. It'll be our first, and hopefully it'll be a demonstration of what we can do in other watersheds in the future. Our anti-degradation review, Clay Rogers, is our co-executive sponsor on the activities at the statewide activity. There was a lot of activity over the last year. Clay spent a lot of hours working on this activity. And with it, they've met with stakeholder groups throughout the state. They've developed a scoping document and have issued a couple of contracts to UC Davis on looking at developing tools to aid in the implementation of anti-degradation as it applies to groundwater. This was all done mostly as a result of our concern in a recent court case where the anti-degradation policy, as far as I'm concerned, is a great policy. It's pretty simple. Keep clean water clean. I don't find any problem with that at all. It's the guidance documents that were referenced in this order that was for groundwater was using guidance documents for surface water. And the State Board agreed that maybe we need to revisit some of those issues because surface water and groundwater are two different beasts and need to be addressed differently. And so hopefully as the outcome of this will come some, at least maybe, more guidance on how to address anti-degradation as it applies to groundwater. This group has also been very involved in the CV salts efforts as well. The SGMA, Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, it's pretty much being ran out of the State Board. We do a lot of coordination with them, and we are spending a lot of time working on this for them. It promotes the local control of groundwater. It requires the groundwater sustainable agencies and that they develop sustainability plans by the 2022. And without those, if the State Board needs to, they can intervene as a backstop. We also see that we're also trying to investigate how this plays into our CV salts activities and the management zone. So those are all things being questioned, and that is one reason why Department of Water Resources, who's really the lead agency over SGMA, has now become actively engaged with CV salts. Adam Lapitz is heading up our Healthy Soils Initiative. This is a governor's initiative from this year. We know that healthy soils mean adequate soil organic matter. That means, and it's also being led through our sister agency, California Department of Food and Ag, or CDFA. But we're engaged in that because of what they're adding organic matter to the soils to build them up, to make them healthy, and we just want to make sure there's no unintended consequence of water quality impacts. But there are multiple benefits of healthy soils for soil stability and erosion, which is another water quality concern of ours. It adds to helping with climate change resilience, and it improves sustainability for our agriculture. And we will continue to stay engaged in that activity. We had a workshop a while ago on climate change, and we were going to develop a work plan, but a lot of the regional boards were having workshops, and so there was a decision that there needed to be better coordination. So a lot of the effort right now has been on developing what we need for being consistent while recognizing there may be differences depending on the location of the region. And so they're developing now a work plan structure that follows basically the water board plan of, doing planning, monitoring, assessment, regulating and permitting and enforcing. Of course, we have not ignored climate change. Many of the activities we've been involved in, healthy soils, our wetlands, nutrient and salt planning, our drought response, and El Nino response have all been efforts to address the climate change issue as it pertains to water quality. Adam has also been involved in the wetland restoration project that was initiated through the Water Quality Coordinating Committee last year in 2014. Since then, and John Costantino has been involved in this. That was led by Steve Morse, the board member Steve Morse at the State Board, on how to foster and track and gain wetlands development throughout the state. And basically, they've have the regional boards track 2 to 4 restoration projects within their region a year and then report out at the Water Quality Coordinating Committee meetings. This group has met a number of times, Adam and John and the other regional boards and state board, to address how we move this forward. They made a number of recommendations, including the improved monitoring and tracking of our wetlands, incentivize the creation of wetlands through our regulatory actions, consider the development or of increasing the number of wetlands through alternative compliance projects, streamlining our permitting so that it enables and incentivizes the development of wetlands, and of course to emphasize the need of wetlands to address some of our climate change issues. For years, this board has been working on the digesters for dairy manure with our general order adopted in 2010 for general orders for manure only and then co-digestion. Staff has stayed steadily involved in this, working with CDFA, who is our lead agency on that. So far, we have 14 digesters in the region, and we expect more over time. We've worked on the technical groups and approved funding for 5 more digesters in the region. We also have used our dairy co-digestion general order for a Pixley biogas facility, which uses both dairy manure and food waste.
When you say we have 14 digesters, are those?
Manure only.
Pardon?
Manure only.
Manure only. Are these above ground or in ground?
In ground.
In ground. Thank you.
We'll get there, Dr. Longley. Drinking water, if part of CV salts and part of the issues of dealing with the very small communities in the Central Valley, trying to find a treatment system that treats nitrates but does not generate a high brine waste is a somewhat of a key interest to me in particular, but through the CV salts effort. So we have a drinking water treatment project ongoing. It started with the city of Delano, a much larger city, and they did a pilot there for these, they call it fixed bed bioreactor. It's biological treatment as opposed to ion exchange or others that create a brine waste. A biological treatment does not generate the waste that we have with the others. And it worked well in Delano, and now we're taking it to a small community, Paradise Colony, which has very few connections, of less than 10, about 5 connections, which has a very low on-demand. They don't have storage, so we have to see how this will work with an on-demand type system and how they would operate it. So this will be in about April when we move the bioreactor to that location to pilot it to see just how it will work in such a small community.
In fact, the city of Delano system has gone beyond pilot. They just dedicated their operating plant. So
Very good.
it's
That's
a good
nice to
system.
In terms of operations, organization, our operations support, led by Dave King, our electronic content management. We now are receiving and forwarding and filing and tracking our incoming mail electronically. It was well received by our dischargers. We've exceeded all of our goals. We've reduced our mail by 70%, and we now are receiving more than 30,000 documents electronically received to date. Brett Braidman on our other support staff, we've been able now to assign analytical staff to our core regulatory programs to assist our technical staff in their activities, so we can relieve our technical staff of some of the things that can be done by non-technical staff, let them be free to do more on their work, and our program support staff is available. So we were able now to assign those to all of our core regulatory programs. Additional program improvements to help our staff would be a office procedures manual, which I don't think it's been really looked at or really updated for many, many years. I think Inga, Dr. Longley, was one of the last, if you remember Inga.
That goes back to ancient history.
Yes. And developing a hiring guide for staff and managers that will help them go through that system. Another thing is our portfolio management that was led by Clint Snyder and the EMG. It was developed back in implemented in 2013 to deal with the fact we had 3 offices and 18 programs and staff in all 3 offices involved in that, and a high number of staff throughout these 3 offices, and some of the staff dealing with multiple program areas. So it was a region-wide programmatic effort, focus. It integrates and builds upon existing tools and processes and investments. It was in our goal of promoting transparency, accountability, and efficiencies at all levels in the organization because it reaches from executive all the way to line staff. And it serves as a framework or a platform for us to build on. We've been doing it 2 years now. We've gone through our learning pains. We still have more learning pains to go through, but it's a good tool, and I'm looking very forward to how we implement it this year. We've made some changes this year to better align some of them with our more detailed budgetary analysis. This is just a graph of showing the 18 program areas. With that, we assign a program manager to each of the activities, and each of them have an executive sponsor that the program manager can work through. And then, so we've got this so it's spread around the entire region so that our one of the main goals is to increase and constantly improve our communication between our offices for the board.
Pamela,
Yes.
can I get a copy of that slide? Because sometimes I have people reach out to me and I'm not quite sure how to direct them. So.
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Since 2013, we've added a couple programs, administration, our cannabis cultivation oil fields. The EMG has worked on working with the leadership team. We have the EMG, which is made up of the AEOs and me. And then we have our leadership team, which is made up of the program managers and the AEOs, or the EMG team, together. And so the question is what's the leadership team? So we've been working a lot on we developed a couple of papers so that we could better define what their involvement is, what their role is, what are we expecting from this team. And with them, we also then decided that we were getting programmatic work plans as part of the portfolio management that weren't consistent between program managers, so we did to try and make that more consistent, we developed some paperwork and documents to guide them through that analysis too. We've also tasked them with some things to do in terms of further defining the roles and responsibility guidelines for the leadership team, developing a communication matrix because we have program managers directing staff that report to other managers and are in other offices. And so how does that work so that we keep the proper people informed at the same time while we're making sure that the program manager can make sure their program work plans are met. And then, of course, conflict resolution guidance, because not everyone's going to agree with everyone else, so we need a guide to help us go through this process. Another improvement to our organization was the use of this Lean Six Sigma. It was a program offered to the board through the governor's office, and it's something we took advantage of, and we decided at that time to use this to do an analysis of our non-15, our WDR program. It's a management tool that uses analytical methods and qualitative analysis to define problems, discover solutions, and track progress. So at this point with the WDR program, we decided we would look at our permit adoption process, the time it took overall for adoption, and then the steps within that activity, how we could improve on that. So we looked at that, we analyzed the time for the various steps, we determined what steps should be improved, we created measures to streamline those activities, and right now, we're currently in the implementation and tracking phase. So this is a graphic of what I'm going to discuss next. It took each of the steps that was in this big flow chart and took it down to chunks of time. And as you can see, each of those steps cumulatively added to causing us to go to sometimes more than 400 days to complete a permit. So we found that our permits were taking 1.5 to 3 years to develop and bring before the board. And we had to find ways to reduce that time. So first we found that we had problems with the submission of the report of waste discharge. We figured it took about 200 days of staff attention to this process, and we could reduce that to 0. The issue paper process, which is used to help inform the seniors and program managers of issues of concerns around a permit, from 50 days to 25 days. The review of the report of waste discharge from 50 days to 25 days, and the drafting of the order from 75 to 35 days. What we found is that we're receiving a significant number of incomplete permit applications. So one of the things we're going to do is develop an application review checklist that will be available to the public so that they know what we're expecting. We're also shifting the burden of missing information to the applicant. Basically, it's going to be returned with our letter telling them specifically what they need to do, and that we will have no further action on it until they get the information to us. Instead of staff constantly tracking and then doing the work for the applicant. Now, sometimes if they're a poor community, we do help them. But in general, we've been holding on to these too long. We need to send it back to the applicant and move on to other things.
Yeah, and that's important because that will relieve the applicant of the expectation that something's happening.
Right, exactly.
Because they probably think that they're somewhat compliant because they've submitted it, but in reality, it's just floating.
Exactly. And maybe because they don't read our letters as follow-up, I don't know, but it's problematic. Reviewing, because we have a checklist, it'll be easier and faster to review our applications. We're providing more guidance to staff on just what the issue paper is for, the purpose of it, and a guidance document so that they don't write. Some staff were writing dissertations, and it wasn't necessary for the issue paper. And then we have permitting activities. Some of the activities we found could be actually put to the program support staff, the non-technical staff that are now assigned through our operations support group. So some of those activities can move to them, freeing up our permit staff to actually do some more of the technical work. So that completes that. So just a discussion from all of that, all of our programs and operations. Our priorities for 2016 will be succession planning to address the number of retirements over the next couple of years. We'll continue our efficiency improvements, working with NPDS and other programs to find ways to improve how we develop our documents and regulations and policies and permits. We will continue to implement the Delta Strategic Plan, which incorporates a number of activities I talked about. We will continue and work to either implement or adequately enforce or develop our groundwater quality protection programs, which includes our ag and dairy programs, and the new programs for our feedlots and our poultry. We will continue our efforts in the oil field program, working with our Dogger and State Board and our dischargers and the stakeholders. We will develop our Battle Creek watershed plan as a priority, and of course CV salts is at the top of the list. So in summary, we have an exceptional and highly qualified technical staff and a superb support staff. They're dedicated and experienced. We have a dedicated and experienced executive and leadership team. All of them accomplished outstanding achievements, addressing very complex issues, and given our resources and the amount of work we have to do, we've made significant accomplishments. And I don't know why. But anyway, I sit here for an hour and a half and tell you about this, but really the biggest thanks goes to all of those who are here today, the technical administrative staff who do most of the work, our seniors and supervisors who are outstanding in getting staff and others to working with our dischargers and stakeholders and working with staff to get the work done. I can't thank the OCC attorneys enough. They're there for us all the time. And the executive officers, as assistant executive officers, they've got my back. I can rely on them. They're great support. And it's just a great team, and they're the ones who do all this work. And so I can't give enough credit and thanks to them.
Even Adam?
Yes, even Adam. Why did you do that to me? No. I don't know if you know, I've known Adam a long time. I've been dragging him along for many years. And he's been willing to be dragged along, so. So any questions? I do want to point out, unfortunately, we did lose a staff member this year, Barry Hilton, who passed away about a month ago. And he was a photographer on the site, and this is a picture done by him of Dry Creek in Auburn, California. So in his honor, I wanted to put that in my presentation.
Thank you very much for a very, very inclusive report. And of course, this has become an annual event, and I think a very important annual event. A wealth of information, and we have to be reminded. We know it's many big, diverse programs, but something like this really brings it home just how big and diverse they are. And so once again, thank you very much. Are there any questions from board members? Yes.
I just had a comment. I mean, this is my annual anniversary of my first meeting from being here last year when I had no clue of what this was all about. And so it's been a good experience this past year. And I just say, while there have been many challenges that the board faces in addressing and protecting the water quality, I'm just totally impressed with the amount of work, the quality of the work, and the ability of staff to do the multitasking to meet many of the deadlines that are before us. You do a tremendous job, and I just commend all of the staff for all the work that you do. And it does make a difference, and our goal is to protect the water quality, and that's what I've seen presented by all of the staff that's been working with us. Thank you very much.
You're very correct. It's a very, very, very able group of individuals. Go ahead, John.
So thank you, Pamela. First thing, I guess, it's sort of a combination of your credits and the awards that Jeannie, Ryan, and Gerald got today. It shows that, if you, I was thinking, I wonder if someone ever added up the total amount of years of water quality experience the board has. It's probably thousands of years. And so this presentation sort of shows all that we're doing, and so that's great. I had a couple of notes. I like the emphasis on the recycling. Water is, every drop counts these days, and even if we fill up the reservoirs, we're going to get back to this position at some point. So we need to keep being progressive on that. I don't know if I have a question, but the part about I think we had 23 minor facilities with tertiary treatment or advanced treatment. And I know that's always been an issue with ongoing funding, and so I don't really have a question, but that's one of the things that sort of stuck out that, that can be a hardship on folks. And then on the cannabis work, you noted that Clint had to get the warrants himself. Are we the lead agency to get warrants? How does that work?
I don't know. Let me have Clint speak specifically. It's the person who's most knowledgeable on what has to be done through the warrant, what the inspection, the reason for it, and it's a process. And each court and judge may have a different way they want it presented. So that's probably the predominant.
So I guess the question was more: Are we the decision maker on who gets a warrant? Is it a water quality lead?
I have to let the attorney sign.
When essentially we do take the lead on when it's primarily water quality issues. We go in ex parte in front of a judge with usually an attorney who brings a signed declaration by an attorney knowledgeable in the matter or staff knowledgeable in the matter. You go in front of the judge, and the water code lets that judge issue a warrant limited in scope for the board to go in there and take a look at a site. And we've gotten warrants for everything ranging from out of compliance UST sites to cannabis sites to dairy facilities. It's usually a last measure that we try. We'll knock on doors and beg and plead, but when the situation warrants, and a lot of these cannabis sites have warranted getting a warrant, going straight to the judge and saying we need access to this site, no ifs, ands, or buts, we really need to get on it. We've demonstrated that there's a water quality issue. So in those cases, we go in much the same way a DA would go in front of a judge and ask for a warrant for a police law enforcement unit.
Okay, thank you. And then one of the other pieces of data that came out at me is the automated report work, and I think it's great. We want to be as efficient as possible, but I think the number was 30,000 documents or something, and as you know, that's been one of my sort of key components. Is if we're collecting all that data, are we looking at it, and I know that's a lot of work, and I guess you don't have to really comment, but just if all that's still coming in, I just want to make sure that there's a need for everything. And it's not on this report, but as we move forward, we'll just be cognizant of that. And then I guess the last thing is it was a whole lot of data, a whole lot of information, very factual. But I was going to put Pamela on the spot a little bit and just ask her for, I don't know if you have to give the board a grade, but just how do you think we're doing in general? Because it's more of an open-ended opinion question rather than everything presented was very structured and factual, which is very helpful. But how do you think we're doing? I know it's putting you on the spot, but
Well, from my perspective, I mean, in terms of how we're doing, as far as I'm concerned, egg work. Now, from someone else's perspective that, if I'm an EJ in a small community with drinking water that's impacted, I may not give us a high mark. But I'm looking at from the lens of how we address it when we recognize there's a problem. What are we doing to address it, and how are we responding to it? In that regard, we're doing an outstanding job. We are tasked with doing a lot with resources that are limited. And we are also very aware of the cost of compliance, so that weighs into a lot of the things we do, and the fact that more resources equates to higher costs. So we prioritize on work. I mean, the oil fields is a big example. Like I said, it started out with the sumps for drilling mud, and that was just the tip of the iceberg, and now it's this huge program. And many more issues we've discovered as time have gone on. We've put ourselves on a work plan. And yes, should have it been done a long time ago? So if that was the way you graded us, then I guess as a board we somewhat failed since we have pollution in the valley. I mean, but have we responded appropriately? Yes. And are we doing things and moving in the right direction? Yes. And has staff done a great job at trying to prioritize and get things done as much as possible? Yes. And are we seeing improvements in water quality? Yes. And will we? Yes. So to me, that weighs into all these factors of how you grade us. But if sometimes which many of our critics do when they look at just the data, it doesn't look like we're doing much because many of our solutions are going to take years to address the problem.
And I'll just respond, thank you for that answer. And I do believe that that's the right answer, that we are doing a lot with a little, and we are aware of what's going on, and things are improving. But nobody's perfect, and as things come up, we respond accordingly. So I certainly appreciate that.
To go on what John said, well, first, I certainly agree with everything that Denise said. It's really impressive when you get sort of one summary of an update on all the different programs. The part that impressed me the most, and I think this is just the way that I lean, is the Lean Sigma 6. That just is great, and I know that work is heavily front-loaded, takes a lot of work. It's probably a giant task to even put together and to take on, but I think it's going to have amazing results. And given the amount of work that this board has, the limited staffing, I think that this is really going to go a long way. So I was really pleased to see that, and I think that that's going to be very good for years to come. And then I know that John put you on the spot about what grade would you give us, but I'm going to give you an easy question and ask you whether or not we're the best looking people you've ever seen up here. No. We know the answer is yes.
Yeah, don't
So I
ask
need to
that one.
No.
That's disallowed.
No, I was what I wanted to know is I hope that over time, and I hope that staff hears this, that I really hear from EJ communities that they really feel that staff is really accessible. And that was one of the major goals, certainly when I met with the legislature, that was something that they were emphasizing. It's something that I've seen results of just from the community contacts that I have. So in addition to all this work that staff's doing on the technical side, I just want to make sure that it's recognized that people feel that staff is accessible, and that was one of the most important things that I wanted to address when I first started on this board. So just want to make sure that that gets into the record as well. So thank you.
Very good. Any further questions? Well, tremendous amount of work went into that. I thank you very much, and we will look forward to seeing your priorities implemented as we go into next year. With that said, we are a bit behind, and so we've got about 25 minutes left before lunch. The next item will take a little while, but I think we'll go ahead and move to item 7 on the agenda, which is the regulation of managed wetlands. This time, the board will hear an information item on managed wetland regulatory options and strategy. This is an information item only, and no action will be taken, although the board may ask questions and provide direction to staff. After the staff presentation, the following interested party will be given 10 minutes to address the board, and that person is Jeffrey Volberg, of the Managed Wetlands Work Group. Other interested parties will then be allowed 3 minutes each to address the board, and we'll now hear the staff presentation.
Good morning, Chair Longley and members of the board. My name is Susan Fergain, and I'm a senior environmental scientist in the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program. Today, I'll be providing an update on managed wetlands topics and potential regulatory options. I'll start with a brief introduction to provide context for today's presentation. Then I'll discuss interim modifications of program orders that staff plans to present in February of 2016. I'll describe the Managed Wetlands Work Group that formed last year and outcomes from their meetings. I'll also discuss follow-up topics from the workshop held earlier this year. Then I'll present options for a regulatory strategy and end with a proposed timeline for 2016. About midway through my presentation, Jeff Bolverg, representative for the Managed Wetlands Work Group, will do a presentation on their behalf, and I'll come back after he's done. Since its inception in 2003, the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program has included managed wetlands. Under both the conditional waivers and the waste discharge requirement orders, the same regulatory requirements have applied to both irrigated agriculture and managed wetlands. However, the management practices used to create and maintain managed wetlands differ significantly from the practices used in commercial agriculture and in ways that distinguish their potential water quality effects. The Irrigated Lands Program orders provide very limited water quality information. Just a moment. The Irrigated Lands Program orders provide very limited water quality information concerning the types of waste expected to be discharged from managed wetlands. This makes it difficult to characterize the effects of managed wetlands on water bodies in the Central Valley. Therefore, provisions in the current orders do not effectively address the unique aspects of managed wetlands operations. As a first step, staff plans to propose some interim modifications to program orders during the February 2016 meeting. Currently, the orders for the Sacramento Valley, San Joaquin Delta, and West Side San Joaquin allow those coalitions to use an approved wetland-specific evaluation template to collect management practices information instead of using the agriculturally oriented farm evaluation template. In addition, those 3 orders do not require development of a nitrogen management plan for parcels operated solely as managed wetlands. Therefore, staff plans to propose revisions in the eastern San Joaquin, Tulare Lake Basin, and western Tulare Basin orders to add equivalent wetlands provisions. These changes will provide program consistency and serve as interim modifications until the board adopts, and if the board adopts, an alternative regulatory strategy for managed wetlands. During the February 2016 meeting, staff also plans to propose revisions to the orders to remove the requirement for managed wetlands to develop a sediment and erosion control plan. Experience and research shows that managed wetlands generally act as large settling basins and filtration systems. Sediment conveyed into the wetland or mobilized internally by physical or biological activity settles out of the water column due to the low or no flow conditions that normally exist. Emergent vegetation also slows water movement and wind action and serves to retain sediment. The process of releasing water from managed wetlands is commonly achieved by removing a series of flashboards over a period of time. The result is a slow drawdown and discharge of water that releases little, if any, suspended sediment into the receiving waters. Because these are common attributes of managed wetlands, staff believes that sediment erosion and discharge is not an issue, and sediment and erosion control plans are not needed for managed wetlands. You may recall that last year the board adopted an extension of the enrollment deadline for managed wetlands in the Tulare Lake Basin. The reason for this extension was twofold. Managed wetlands in the Tulare Lake Basin were not required to enroll in the previous waiver program because they do not have surface water discharges, and staff were in the process of working with stakeholders to develop an alternative regulatory strategy. Staff plans to continue working with stakeholders and believes it would not be an efficient use of resources to require enrollment at this time. Therefore, staff proposed an extension of the enrollment period to December of 2016 for owners and operators of managed wetlands in the Tulare Lake Basin. A notice of public hearing for the proposed time extension was released for public comment in September. Because no public comments were received on the revision, the item is uncontested and is included for board consideration as part of this board meeting. Staff is not presenting any further information on this item unless the board has questions. During workshops and adoption hearings for the current program orders, wetlands representatives provided both written and verbal comments in which they explained their concerns about continuing to be included within the Irrigated Lands Program. In response, the board directed staff to meet with representatives to develop potential regulatory alternatives for managed wetlands. This resulted in the formation of a managed wetlands work group. As shown here, the Managed Wetlands Work Group includes representatives from state and federal agencies, private wetland owners, and nonprofit organizations. Over the last 2 years, work group members held numerous meetings with staff to share information, clarify and articulate their concerns, and discuss a range of options for regulatory coverage of managed wetlands. Work group members also played a major role in organizing and presenting information at a full-day workshop held this year. At this point, we'll take a break in my presentation for Jeff Volberg to speak on behalf of the Managed Wetlands Work Group. Jeff will set the stage, providing information about distribution and ownership of wetlands, and also describe the position of the work group on regulation and water quality issues. After Jeff finishes his presentation, I'll address follow-up topics from the workshop and potential options for a modified regulatory strategy. And I just want to mention that we do have a couple other folks from the work group in the audience today. Paul Forsberg and Jeffrey Shue, who they will be available to answer questions if needed after we're done.
Thank you.
So you can use the up and down arrows.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Jeffrey Volberg. I'm the Director of Water Policy for the California Waterfowl Association, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Managed Wetlands Work Group that Susan described. The main topic, and I think that what we're really looking at, is how to balance the protection and conservation of a public trust resource with the needs for regulation of water quality. And so that's really the underlying theme of what I'm talking about. Managed wetlands really exist as a home for migratory birds. And California is the winter destination for 5 to 6 million ducks and geese that come into the state from predominantly northern Canada, Alaska, and also from the prairie regions in the Midwest of the United States. These ducks and geese rely on floodplains, wetlands for their habitat and for their sustenance. And there are also resident species of birds and other animals that rely on the wetlands, including some endangered species such as the giant garter snake and the salt marsh harvest mouse, just to name a couple. There are others. Going the wrong way. Okay. Migratory waterfowl are a public trust resource. They've used the various flyways in North America since prehistoric times, and they're an integral part of the ecology of Central Valley and California as a whole. They're beautiful to observe. They provide recreation and food to hunters. They constitute a major portion of California's overall ecology and biological communities. And migratory birds are protected and managed under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act of 1918, which is the American Implementation Act of the Migratory Bird Treaty, which is an international agreement as to how to protect these birds, and also the North American Wetlands Conservation Act. Before settlement by Europeans and Americans, the Central Valley of California was, in the fall and winter and spring, was a giant floodplain. The total extent of water coverage, wetlands at that time, is estimated to have been more than 4 million acres. Today, there are approximately 227,000 acres of remaining wetlands available to migrating waterfowl, which includes managed wetlands. It includes seasonal wetlands, semi-permanent wetlands, and permanent wetlands. Prior to 1850, about 40 to 50 million ducks and geese wintered in California. Now it's 5 to 6 million. This is a representation of what the state looked like, the Central Valley basically looked like prior to 1900, and the amount of wetlands on the left-hand picture, and then what it looks like today, what wetlands are left. The light yellowish green on the sides of the valley there, basically grasslands. The red would be the wetlands, the vast majority of which are managed. Wetlands have been reduced due to reclamation for farming, for flood control, for urban development. The major water projects have isolated wetlands and wetland areas and made it harder to connect them. Flood control bypasses still are used as wetlands, but they have restrictions for flood control purposes that complicate management for the waterfowl. And basically what you have left is what, especially in the Central Valley, is what is represented in this picture. The red are federal wildlife refuges, national wildlife refuges. The green are state primarily and some local government wildlife areas. And the remainder is in yellow, which are predominantly privately owned, mainly by duck clubs in the state. Most of those privately owned wetlands are under conservation easements with the state and federal governments in order to try to preserve those lands in perpetuity for the use of the wildlife, the waterfowl. The federal government operates a system of national wildlife refuges that provide habitat for both the migratory and resident birds. One original purpose of the federal refuge system was to reduce depredation of crops. These birds would come down, be looking for a place to eat, for food supply was not available through wetlands, and so they would particularly hit the rice crops very hard. So the federal government acquired property and restored it into managed wetlands in order to help reduce this depredation of crops, and in the process created a fairly extensive system that also incorporated private lands under conservation easements. And so the federal government has a role in managing some of those private lands, in fact most of those private lands, for the purpose of the federal refuge system. The state of California also maintains a system of wildlife areas and wildlife management agencies, and about 2/3 of the remaining wetlands are privately owned, although many are in the conservation easements. Wetlands management is primarily to provide habitat for these migratory birds, largely to allow them to recover from their long migrations, give them a wintering place provide cover from predators, provide food production values. The food that they eat is natural foods that were there, native plants in California that are best grown by mimicking the natural processes and systems that existed prior to the development of the state. Management of water on wetlands helps to spread the birds out away from each other, because when they get too concentrated and too close, then it tends to spread infectious avian diseases such as avian botulism and avian cholera. This has been a problem in the Klamath Basin in the last couple of years with the reduction in the amount of water available there through the drought. Two nonprofit organizations, the organization I work for, California Waterfowl Association, and Ducks Unlimited, do most of the wetlands restoration and maintenance in California. We do a wide variety of projects every year. Some creates new managed wetland areas, and others are maintaining and restoring existing wetlands. Water supply for wetlands comes from a variety of sources. One is the Central Valley Project Improvement Act, which primarily provides water to the federal national wildlife refuges and also to the state wildlife areas. Some of the private property owners own very senior water rights, others less senior water rights, and many were curtailed this past year. Agricultural drain water coming off of the rice fields when they drain in order to harvest, that is used extensively for to flood up wetlands for the birds. Groundwater to much more limited extent because of its expense and because there's usually surface water available. And then rainfall and management of floodwaters is another source of water. I've run out of time. Would you like me to continue, or should I?
How many more slides do you have?
3.
Go ahead.
When available, water is used to irrigate the food sources briefly in the summer, just to maintain the growth. The main use of water is in the fall and winter when the migratory birds arrive. The use of the water comes when the agricultural irrigation season is over and cooler weather reduces the evaporation. So the use of the water is actually very efficient for this flooding. In many areas, agricultural drain water is reused, and then water that is ultimately discharged from wetlands, and Susan showed an example of discharging through the graduated use of the flashboards, that ultimately returns to rivers or to groundwater. So the wetlands fit into a very efficient water use process. There are 2 primary areas of regulation that impact managed wetlands. One is mosquito abatement, which is fairly obvious, and that's something that we have to deal with every year, and a lot of our management practices are meant to reduce mosquito abatement. And the other is the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program. And these regulatory regimes consume money, time, and resources. And for us to protect the public trust resources of migratory birds and other species, regulation really needs to be carefully tailored to address actual harms and issues. Managed wetlands are not the same as commercial agriculture. They've been referred to sometimes as farming for ducks, but really it's a totally different process. They do not use fertilizer. They do not use pesticides. They do use a limited amount of herbicides to reduce, say, cockleburrs and things like those, but usually that's during the period of the year when the managed wetlands are dry. Managed wetlands work very closely with agriculture in many ways, particularly the rice industry, and we're very, very closely tied with the Rice Commission and others. But our cultural practices are very different. So I would like to thank you very much for considering our issue, and I'll return the microphone to Susan.
I thank you very much, and I think you've provided a good overview, certainly on the federal and state managed wetlands. There are some issues, and we'll be discussing these later, but I don't think they apply necessarily to both the state and federal wetlands. They apply to those folks who have wetlands as that are integrated into a farming operation, and that's where I still have some concerns. Thank you.
Okay, so for the next part of my presentation, I'm going to summarize outcomes from the Managed Wetlands Work Group and the April workshop. Work group members have evaluated a range of available regulatory options And although the goals and operations of managed wetlands throughout the valley are very similar, the work group did not reach consensus on a preferred strategy. This was largely due to the uncertainty of the costs associated with alternative strategies and the possibility that costs could be even higher. It's important to make sure that the cost of regulation is appropriate to the water quality threat. Current funding levels for managed wetlands control how much wetland acreage can be created and maintained in a given year. This means that expenditures for regulatory requirements can reduce resources for managing wetland habitats. We also know that managed wetlands and irrigated agriculture may have some common concerns in some settings, but not in others. For some wetland areas, coordination with irrigated agriculture may be the most efficient way to implement their common TMDL, or total maximum daily load requirements, such as the San Joaquin River Salt and Boron TMDL, the Selenium TMDL, and the Delta Methylmercury TMDL. On April 15th of this year, a full-day managed wetlands workshop was held near Los Banos at the San Luis National Wildlife Refuge. All workshop materials were provided electronically and are currently available on our website under the April 2015 board meeting agenda item. Workshop presentations included comprehensive information regarding wetland habitat management methods, managed wetland benefits, and the history of managed wetlands in the Irrigated Lands Program. Some topics raised during the workshop could not be fully answered right away. I'll be following up on the following 3 topics today. First, I'll present a definition proposed by the work group, which takes a definition for managed wetlands, proposed by the work group, which takes into account what is and what is not considered a managed wetland. Second, I'll address whether there is a difference in potential water quality effects between public and private wetlands. And lastly, I'll address the question of whether wetlands in the Tulare Lake Basin have the potential to affect groundwater quality. On several occasions, various stakeholders have raised the question about what constitutes a managed wetland. The Managed Wetlands Work Group proposed a managed wetlands definition, which is as follows. So they are wetlands that receive artificial seasonal, semi-seasonal, or permanent flooding to induce marshland development, primarily for the benefit of migratory and resident wildlife species. As orders are developed or modified in the future to address managed wetlands, staff intends to include a definition of managed wetlands. It is also important to identify areas that do not meet the definition of a managed wetland, although they may contain similar structures or appearance. Managed wetlands do not include groundwater recharge basins, tailwater recirculation or sedimentation ponds, or evaporation ponds, or wetlands that are constructed for the primary purpose of filtering urban or stormwater runoff. During the April workshop, a fairly lengthy discussion took place around the perceived differences in the management of public versus privately managed wetlands. The potential effects of water quality, if any, do not differ between publicly and privately managed wetlands. This is because wetland management decisions and practices on private wetlands are the same as those used on public wetlands. It's true that publicly managed wetlands tend to have more resources available, which may result in a wider variety of habitats and enhanced habitat quality for wildlife. But this does not equate to differences in the threat to water quality. The main difference between public and private wetlands is the extent to which more costly practices, such as maintaining different types of wetland habitat, can be implemented. It's important to note that the majority of private wetlands are under a conservation easement, which specifies the appropriate types of management practices. If a landowner is unable to flood the land or maintain a wetland habitat in a given year, the easement owner has the right to assist so that these activities can continue. And I guess just for little additional information is that the easements are generally overseen by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the NRCS are the major ones that oversee those. Another question raised during the April workshop was about the potential effects of managed wetlands on shallow groundwater in the Tulare Lake Basin. As previously mentioned, wetlands in the Tulare Lake Basin do not discharge to surface water. Water applied to these wetlands may be reused to irrigate other on-site parcels or allowed to evaporate or percolate into the ground. Staff does not believe that this scenario poses a threat to groundwater quality for several reasons. Managed wetlands do not apply fertilizers, and pesticide use is low to non-existent. And it's also important to note that groundwater salinity issues in the Tulare Basin are due to the intensive soil and water practices used by agriculture to control the subsurface salts and protect the crop root zone from high salt concentrations. Because wetland managers do not apply fertilizers or need to flush salts from the soil profile, these wetlands are unlikely to pose a threat to shallow groundwater salinity. At this time, I'd like to take just a moment to summarize my key points so far. For program consistency, interim modifications in the current orders are planned for February. The Managed Wetlands Work Group identified the cost of regulation as a primary concern and desires flexible regulatory requirements to balance water quality with public trust values and benefits. A definition of what constitutes a managed wetland is needed. The potential to affect water quality does not differ between public and private wetlands. Tulare Basin wetlands do not pose a threat to groundwater issues. So overall, the information we have suggests that overall managed wetlands pose a significantly lower threat to water quality than irrigated agriculture. In the remaining part of my presentation, I'll provide an overview of potential regulatory options and proposed next steps. At least 4 potential options are available if the board considers changing the existing regulatory approach. The first option would be continuing to cover wetlands under the existing irrigated lands program orders, but modifying the orders to incorporate wetland-specific provisions. A few months ago, the Managed Wetlands Work Group made a suggestion along these lines. However, this option raises serious concerns because incorporating wetland-specific provisions will burden the existing coalitions with wetland-specific administrative, tracking, and reporting costs. These extra obligations could completely offset any cost savings. A second option would be to develop a low-threat, wetland-specific third-party order under the existing program in the same way the board issued a commodity-specific order to rice growers. However, if the board adopts a wetland-specific third-party order, board staff resources will be needed to oversee implementation of the order, and without the economy of scale realized within the current coalition groups, costs might actually be higher. The Managed Wetlands Work Group did not feel this was a good option. A third possibility would be to create an optional low-threat general order for individual wetlands that would have very minimal requirements for wetlands that meet specific low-threat criteria. Wetland managers could choose to maintain coverage under their existing coalition, or they could apply individually for coverage under the new low-threat general order. So when I say optional, I mean they have the option between staying in the coalition and applying for an individual coverage under a general order. A fourth option is for the board to make findings that certain wetlands do not actually discharge wastes in ways that could affect the quality of waters of the state and thereby exempt those wetlands from regulation. Board staff are leaning towards one or a combination of these last two options, which appear to offer the most cost-effective ways to address the unique aspects of wetlands. Before I suggest next steps, it would be useful to briefly review both the known water quality concerns and benefits of managed wetlands. We know managed wetlands may contribute to some negative water quality effects. For example, in the Central Valley, particularly in the Delta area, managed wetlands contribute to methylmercury production. Wetlands managers are currently participating in implementation of the methylmercury TMDL requirements. Similarly, in the San Joaquin Valley, managed wetlands are identified as a contributing source to elevated salt loading in surface waters. These areas are expected to participate in implementation of the salt and boron and selenium TMDLs. Additionally, discharges from managed wetlands may occasionally lower dissolved oxygen in receiving waters on a short-term basis. Staff believes that when wetlands have a nexus to known water quality issues, they can be addressed through the applicable TMDLs. It's also important to note that managed wetlands provide water quality benefits. As stated earlier in my presentation, managed wetlands do not grow commercial crops or apply fertilizers. In fact, they often act as nutrient sinks. Pesticide use consists of relatively low amounts of herbicides applied in a targeted fashion, not in an extensive broadcast manner. Managed wetlands act as sediment retention basins due to the types of habitat management and water release practices that are employed. The filtering capacity of wetlands is well established, and numerous studies show that they can remove significant amounts of sediment, nutrients, and pesticides. These elements of wetland management lend support to the position that they are a low threat to water quality. While it is known that managed wetlands may contribute to some water quality issues, staff believes that regulatory requirements could be streamlined to address only identified water quality issues. Therefore, if the board agrees that further consideration of option 3, which is the optional low threat order, and or option 4, which is where the board finds that some wetlands pose no threat to water quality, are reasonable, I would propose the following timeline. This timeline would enable the board to adopt a modified regulatory strategy for managed wetlands during 2016. In February, interim modifications would be proposed for adoption. In June, staff would present the board with a suggested framework of criteria to make findings that certain wetlands are exempt. With guidance then provided to staff, the board could make findings later in 2016. And if it is determined that a low-threat wetlands order is desired, staff could present a straw man order to the board in August. And that completes my presentation.
Any comments by board members? I like your option 3. The low threat scares me a little bit until I'm convinced that there's not a single wetland that we have responsibility for that won't have a methylmercury issue. And I know that down Tulare Lake Basin that's probably not an issue, but up here in this part of the world it is. And however, in the irrigated lands program, we're looking at low threat, high threat, and so maybe some sort of division like that. But to call I'm in favor of a general order, but to say in the title of the general order that this is a low threat general order kind of concerns me. Maybe it's only a few wetlands, but we do have this methylmercury issue that we tend to be learning more about all the time, and that one item is the one that really scares me.
First of all, thank you. And second of all, this is a great picture. And so I get right. The idea is if the board goes along with the idea of 3 and option 3 and 4 sort of combination, we would do the analysis for those. I'm gonna make sure I get the words right. Do the analysis to determine which wetlands don't present a water quality threat, at which point they would not be in they would not be in the irrigated lands at all, or
so if the board is able to make findings that certain wetlands meet certain criteria that they would determine then that those don't have a threat to water quality, then they wouldn't be they would not need regulatory coverage.
But it's my understanding, excuse me, John, that general order would move them out of irrigated lands into their own program. Is that correct?
So,
Just-
so there's, go ahead, go ahead.
And Susan might have been on the verge of saying the same thing, but there's two things going on right here. Essentially, we'd be categorizing wetlands. There'd be some subset of wetlands that would be truly de minimis, that we'd take a look at all the information that's come in as they've been enrolled in the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program for the past 10 years or so. Take a look at all that information and say, these particular group of wetlands do not pose any risk to water quality. Thank you. You don't need a permit. Another subset would be those that pose a low threat. Perhaps methylmercury producing wetlands would be excluded from that. Perhaps they could be included with conditions. And then another group of wetlands would continue to get regulated under the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program, either because the wetlands managers chose that as an option or because they didn't fit the criteria of the general order that we'd be developing for wetlands. And the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program might be the place where they could still receive coverage. Maybe it would be related to particularized water quality concerns such as TMDL, or perhaps there would be other parameters that would keep them in the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program. But the intent would be for all wetlands that really do pose a low threat to water quality, that they would have a bare bones general order that would only require very minimal reporting, and then a de minimis tier that wouldn't require a permit at all.
Thank you.
That's helpful. And I think your last slide answers the question, but the order is figure out which ones would be sort of out of the program, and then figure out what's left, and then draft an option for those guys. And then once that happens, then the managers of the wetlands can make a decision. If they're not already out, go with, I just want to make sure I got that order. Is that right?
I'm open to suggestions, but that's the general approach I was thinking of.
No, I mean, that makes sense. I guess the only other order would be that, you develop the alternative first, and then if, everybody's subject to it except for those that fall out later. But that doesn't seem to make as much sense. So I seem to be okay with where we're headed.
Well, that's going to be the subject of more hearings. Good. Any further comments? I have a
Wait,
card for.
I'm sorry. So it'll be subject to more hearings, but in February, you're gonna bring back exactly what, and we're
Okay.
gonna,
This
Yeah.
is an information item, but
I know this is, but
Right.
but February won't be, and
Right.
it seems like we're guiding you towards February. Is that right?
Right. February is the next point that I was gonna. So I would bring forward the interim modifications, which are just to go real quick. So we have 3 orders that already allow for a wetland-specific template and do not require nitrogen management plans.
Oh, okay, I got it.
So I'd make those consistent. I would propose that we don't require sediment and erosion control plans for managed wetlands in any of our orders. And, of course, we already did this one is on our item today, the extension for Tulare Lake Basin. So those items that I just talked about
Right,
would
so I'm
be
sorry, I
February.
got confused. That's what February is about.
Yeah.
And then the guidance you're asking for is the longer term. Okay, all right,
Yeah.
I got it.
Joe McGann? Thank you very much, Joe. You do provide us good guidance a lot of times. Thank you. Well, Susan, great presentation, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Oh, you didn't give me a card. I did. No.
Joe McGann kept it.
Bruce, come on. We know who you are.
I never stand between anybody and love.
No, you can speak.
Bruce, we're not going to close this session until you speak. Nobody goes to lunch till you speak.
Bruce Howdeshelt, Northern California Water Association, representing the Sac Valley Water Quality Coalition. I wanted to answer John Costantino's question earlier today about the grade. In all seriousness, you know what, I look at, and I thought the question was, how's the board doing?
That would really be putting her on the spot.
No, but you know, I serve on a planning commission, and I view the board in all candor, much like the planning commission. We all bring different perspectives to the position, and you guys make an incredible team, along with the incredible staff that you have. These are complex issues. They're not. I would not invite anyone to sit through 6 hours of CV salts, but I've admired your executive officer and many of your staff who sit there monthly and sometimes twice a month through that process. So I wanted to add that. With respect to managed wetlands, they're part of an integrated hydrological system. We have a lot of mutually beneficial outcomes, both for the ecosystem and for water quality. You know, they are really low threat. And, you know, as I think Carl, the chairman, identified, the orders identify high and low threat areas. And I would view that maybe one pathway, and maybe this is where Susan's going and the wetlands group is going, is just delineate them as low vulnerability. They turn their farm evaluations in, wetland-specific farm evaluations in every 5 years. They don't do the nitrogen management, and they don't do the sediment erosion control. That relieves the burden of the, you know, at least from the Sac Valley, of the reporting, database management aspects of it, and some of the costs associated with that. So that's the only comment I had. Let's go to lunch.
Thank you very much. And we'll take Bruce's suggestion. And we will adjourn, or not adjourn, we will recess until, what time is it now? Till 1 hour from now, till 1:20. And do we have anything for executive session today?
Yeah, Dr. Longley, we have item G, which is the SAC regional litigation to discuss in closed session.
And we'll be discussing that in closed session. Thank you very much. We'll see you back at 1:20 or thereabouts.